Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Ariano. Councilmember Nasrati. Councilmember Larson. Councilmember Esquer.
Here.
Mayor Bublak.
Here. Declaration of conflicts. Hearing and seeing none, we will proceed to the closed session, which will be at the end of the meeting this time. Approval of agenda as posted or amended. Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to request that that portion of city manager's comments, which would include the update from the fire department, be added to the agenda here, taken out of order after the proclamations and before public comment.
Okay, if somebody would wish to make a motion with that, or?
I'll move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by, we have District 4 and then District 3. I'm throwing her off. Okay.
Thank you very
Call
much,
the roll.
Mayor. Councilmember Ariano?
Yes.
Councilmember Nasrati?
Yes.
Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, and now we'll go to recognitions. So if I could have Dominique Sanchez up here. Okay. Do you have family here you want to bring up and feel a little better, or you okay? You're okay with me? Okay, awesome. Okay, so we do a Employee of the Month, and this is our Employee of the Month for June. Dominique is a secretary with the Turlock Police Department. So I apologize in advance, you have to work with some tough people. So she was been named the City of Turlock's Employee of the Month for June 2019. Dominique was nominated for the extra measure in many ways. Dominique was assigned as a secretary of the Field Operations Division and began her career with the Turlock Police Department in July 2013 as a part-time employee assigned to the Records Division and became a full-time records technician in February of 2015. In February 2017, she became a full-time secretary and was assigned to Field Operations. This new challenge for Dominique was that her new assignment was a position that she was completely restructured from what the position had previously been. Dominique accepted the challenge in a positive manner and has exceeded the expectations of the restructured position. Her assigned projects are completed in a timely manner, which demonstrates her commitment to her position. Dominique has a pleasant and positive demeanor. She is eager to take on new assignments and has a can-do attitude. Even on days which may be overwhelming with assignments, she smiles and says yes to more. Dominique loves to learn and help with new assignments. She goes the extra mile to ensure the captain has support, but she also supports all the lieutenants as well, and any other requests from field operations staff. Her personal hobbies: she was born and raised in Turlock. Graduated from Turlock High, and volunteered in human resources before being employed by the Turlock Police Department. She met the love of her life, Greg, maybe that's why you don't want him up here, huh? At Turlock Police. And they have 3 children, Jaden, Lane, and Avery. Dominique enjoys spending time with her family, shopping, decorating her home, attending Giants games, and eating their delicious garlic fries. Going on family camping trips and cruising around with the family in their 1968 GTO. Sweet. So please help me in thanking her with an applause for being such a great employee. It's your opportunity to introduce your family, say whatever you'd like, and these are yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, City Manager. My family, they're sitting back there. There's Greg, and he has all of our babies. They are hanging by a thread right now, so that's why they're back there and by the door for a quick exit. I started off in human resources as a volunteer. I did that for almost a year, working 32 hours a week. I learned a lot, but I had my son at the time, just him, and it was hard. I was his only support system, so I felt like I needed to, work full time and go get a job that had insurance. And my dad reassured me, you have a good foot in the door with the city, stay in there, like it will be worth it.
Smart
And
man.
so, yes, smart man. So I'm glad I stuck it out, and I'm very grateful that the Turlock Police Department picked me up, and I worked part-time for a year and a half, and then I got full-time. So it's been a great opportunity, and I thank Chief and Mary and my captain, Miguel Pacheco, for all the opportunities they've given me, and thank you guys for believing in me, and you guys giving me more than just a job.
Thank you. Okay, we have a presentation on revenue generating options by our city manager. How'd that happen?
Michael Slide? Should I be down here? Good evening, everyone. I'm here this evening to talk about options for generating additional revenues to help operate city government. And before I jump into that, I just want to quickly remind everybody of what we have just been through. Under prior administrations, the city has committed itself to certain recurring expenses that did not have recurring sources of revenues attached to them. You can only spend so much of your savings before you are flat on your feet. And that's kind of the position we found ourselves in this year. In the previous year's budget, the one that expired on June 30th, we had about $3.2 million in these expenses over revenues, of which 2.7 was, is there a mouse out there? Oh, okay. About 2.7 million was invested in personnel. All departments, police, fire, general government, whether it was new people, whether it was fulfilling collective bargaining agreements, but that's hard money, and it goes directly into public services. When we asked departments to come up with a budget for 1920, the year we are in, year we've just started, I said, be mindful of the situation we're in, but come back to me with a budget request that allows your departments to do your job the way you as professionals believe it should be done. We didn't add new people, and we didn't add necessarily new programs. The gap between our projected revenues and the needs of these departments was $4.4 million. We went from a $4.4 million deficit through this budget process down to a balanced budget where we pay this year's bills with this year's revenues. It was not the budget that any of us wanted to submit. It was certainly not the budget the council wanted to adopt, but we have to live with fiscal reality. We are constrained in what we do and how much of it we do by the revenues that we have. And here's another thing I can tell you. Over the last several years, and certainly since I've started working with this talented group of department heads, we have already squeezed all the juice out of our oranges. We cannot print on 3 sides of a sheet of paper. We still need to have the lights on in our offices once in a while to see what we're doing. We have economized. We are running an incredibly lean government as it is. So there's no slack in our budgets. There's no fancy trips or any of that stuff going on. We are running a lean, efficient operation, as much as possible, and we still can't provide the public with the kinds of services our employees desperately want to do. Our professional staff has worked at the limit for the last several years. I don't think we've ever really recovered in terms of services since the days of 2008 and 2009. And that's because of our revenue limitations. The city of Turlock is now about 75,000 residents. Many of our structures, our organizational setup, and certainly our sources of revenue are more compatible with the city of 35,000 that we were many years ago. And if we look at our neighboring cities in Stanislaus County, and we look at cities elsewhere in the state of California that are our size, they're organized differently, and they have a much broader source of revenue. So that's the background for what I'm going to be discussing tonight. I'll try not to take too long. It's 21 slides, but I think there's a couple of cartoons in there, so it won't be too bad. But I want to go through these because this council will have to start giving staff some direction in the next few weeks. Some of the options that we would seek to pursue, there's a time window. We have a budget in place right now for 1920 that it's not pleasant, and that we don't do all the things we want to do for our people, but we can get through 1 year of it. And it's structurally balanced. We didn't kick any cans down the road that are going to cost us more next year. We can do this for a year. If we push ourselves and we keep tightening our belts, we could do it for 2 years. But as your city manager, I cannot recommend anything beyond that. This year's budget, and whatever budget we adopt for 2021, and we're already starting to work on that, they are not the new normal for this city. They cannot be the new normal for this city. They are what we do in order to get through the year and get to a point where we're going to have the ability to generate some additional revenue. So with that, I'm going to start discussing some of the options here. Okay, and I talked about constraints. Those of us who have been in California for a number of years remember Prop 13. Those of us who have been here a little less, they know about Prop 218. Prop 13 was the property tax relief. Prop 218 addresses imposition of fees and assessments and other charges that I think probably got abused a little bit after Proposition 218. By the way, this is all on the website. I don't know if we've got more extra copies in the back. And for those of you who are regular fans of our program, you will have seen this a number of times already this year. So if I go a little quickly, there'll be lots of other places to get this information. I will not stand here and read each slide word by word. But Prop 13, Prop 218, and Prop 26, those are the ground rules under which we pay. The restriction on property taxes, the right to vote on assessments and fees, and then finally the definition of tax, which was a constitutional amendment. Okay, what's a fee? What's a tax? And you can tell that this is an important one because there's an important point logo on there. Fees are what we do. Fees are something we charge for the cost of providing a service. And fees generally are for those things that have a particular benefit to a particular individual or group of individuals. We don't have a fee for police, we don't have a fee for fire, we don't have a fee for parks or engineering. These are for particularly, you get a permit, that's a fee. Plan check, that's a fee. And they are required to be limited to the cost of providing the service. We cannot make up next year if we undercharge a fee or we don't realize the revenues we want from a fee. We can't just jack the fee up the following year to make up for what we missed. We have to pay for that out of the general fund. Taxes, they are an imposition on individuals for the purpose of supporting general government. Revenues in the excess of cost of providing services are a tax and have to be subjected to voter approval. Fees are very strictly regulated, again, to ensure that we are not using them as a substitute for tax. Fees are adopted by the council as opposed to being adopted by a vote of the public. That's the other key difference. When you see fees from the city, they are calculated, not by our talented city people, but by folks from the outside, by consultants who have no particular interest. They're objective. They do this for a living. It is never a matter of the city trying to set its own rates in order to do who knows what for who knows why. Taxes require voter approval, and there are two types of taxes. General taxes, which the city can use for any general fund purpose within our budget, within any of the departments. Others are special taxes, and they come in a number of flavors. Some of them are for parks. Some of them are for libraries. Some of them are for public safety. A general tax requires a 50% plus one approval, and a special tax requires 2/3 plus one. It's a higher threshold. It kind of doesn't, it's kind of counterintuitive to think, well, if I ask for a tax for general purposes, it's easier than getting one for a specific purpose where it's narrowly drawn, but that's how it goes. Okay, and here's another important graphic, kind of saying what we've already talked about. Fees cannot exceed the cost of providing the service or regulating the business if it's a license or something like that. Taxes, general and special, and we've already been over that. Here's where it gets a little more interesting. There are a variety of different types of taxes, and I will take time to go through these. There's a sales and use tax, and there's already a baseline state rate, and then on top of that, sometimes you'll find a county tax, sometimes a special tax like a library tax, whether it's 1/4 cent or 1/2 cent. So you start going up from 7.25, you start stacking these taxes on top of each other, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. There is a cap on the total amount of tax that can be charged, a total sales tax percentage that can be charged. We may get to it later. I think it's over 10%. Los Angeles is at 10% between city taxes and district taxes and the state tax. We have plenty of room on our sales tax. Business license tax, we have that. That's levied on business activity in the city. We have a minimum and we have a cap on our business license tax. And whether you are, whether you're Costco or Walmart, once you hit that cap, it doesn't matter how much more business you do. You never pay more than the capped amount. And that capped amount is probably, you might have Walmart, and I have no special knowledge because it's all double secret stuff. We don't get to know the names. But Garden Tractor and Walmart, probably over the course of the year, may pay the same amount because they're capped. And once you hit the cap, it doesn't matter whether you're here or whether you're here, you're only going to pay the same rate. TOT, transient occupancy tax, we love that. We love that because it's paid for by people who, by definition, don't live here. And it is in hotels and lodgings under 30 days. We appropriate a portion of that for activities, to encourage activities that generate additional tourism, heads and beds, as we like to say. So the hotel tax, part of it goes for the city purposes, part of it goes to encourage more tourism activity, to get people to come and stay in hotels. And I will say that we have incredibly strong hotel occupancy right now. We are in a very, we come from a position where we are filling the beds well over 90% occupancy on certain nights. And as somebody who came here a year ago, in fact, Thursday would be my first anniversary, and had to stay in a hotel for a while and have had people come in, I know how hard it is to get a hotel. We're filling them up. That means that competitive advantage, we do have some leeway in terms of it's not a terrible hard competition to have people come and stay in Turlock. We have enough things that draw them here. And we can afford to be at, near, or maybe a little bit above some of our neighboring cities, and you'll see that as we go along. Utility user tax. I don't believe we have one of those here in the city. Many cities have them around the state, and that's a tax on the consumption of utility services, electric, cable, I think water, all of that stuff. And there's some specific information about that. Parcel taxes. A parcel tax is a tax on units of property. It's not based on the value of property. It could be based on just each parcel pays $5, whether it's 100 acres or 5 acres. Or in some cases, I've seen it based on the acreage, but not on the value. So it doesn't go up over time as property values increase. Usually you see parcel taxes used when the school districts use them for some reason, and localities will use parcel taxes if they want to go out and do a bond issue. And with a bond issue, the debt service is the same every year. It's like your mortgage. So if your mortgage or your debt service is going to be the same every year, you could do a parcel tax that would let you, doesn't matter 20 years from now, that it hasn't gone up because the obligation which you incurred to pay for it hasn't gone up either. And that's a 2/3 vote, a little harder to get. And then finally, property transfer taxes based on the value of real estate when it gets sold, which is good source of revenue when the economy is moving and new units are being built. But it's pretty sensitive to the economy. Okay. Parcel taxes. Parcel taxes are 2/3 vote. Other taxes are just simple majority. We have to have a general tax like we would have for sales or TOT. That has to be consolidated with a regularly scheduled election. We couldn't have it on the 5th Wednesday of a month ending in Y in hopes everybody's going to be out of town. It's got to be on the ballot with everybody, general taxes. Special taxes you have some more leeway with, but again, they're harder to pass. They're harder to pass. And you have to account for your special tax funds, your monies from a special tax, in a different fund. And to be more transparent, you can't plow them into the general fund and then later say that you're going to explain how it's all being spent. Okay. Sales and use tax. Again, sales and use can either be general or special. And here's the breakdown for the base. So the state base is 7.25, and you can't go over in any single jurisdiction 2% from the base. So if we had, right now we've got a 7.85% sales tax. It's a little under 8 cents on the dollar. You can see some of it's for statewide base. There's a transportation 0.5% and a 1/8% for libraries. If we added 1 cent to that, one more penny to the sales tax, we would generate in the city of Turlock $14 million a year. And that would put us up at 8.875. The cities of Fort Bragg and Ukiah up in Mendocino County, they have a 1 cent. They're up at that tax rate. 3/4 cent would give us $10 million. Ceres, Oakdale, and Fairfield, they're at 0.5 cent. They're at 8.375. That would generate $7 million a year for us. Rio Vista and Vacaville up in Solano County, they have a 8.125. That would give us 3.6. And then San Bernardino and Woodland, they have an 8% sales tax. That would generate $1.8 million for us. So there are a number of choices. Now, a couple of things I'm going to offer to you. One is, I think it's probably better for us, for the city, for city government, if we don't try and cobble together a bunch of different approaches and try and seek approval for them in an election. There's a school of thought that says, have one decision on the ballot, and you have a very clear discussion about what the stakes are. The other thing to consider is, as I said, with a parcel tax will stay flat. You'll never get more than what you have. Taxes related to value or economic activity, like a sales tax, have a tendency to go upward over time as activity increases. So therefore, if we have costs of doing business in a city, which even if you didn't change anything, even if you didn't have any more people, if you didn't buy any more equipment, there's going to be normal costs of business are going to escalate over time. And it's healthy to have a revenue source that funds that will also continue to increase over time and keep supporting those activities. It might be easy to do a quick and dirty measure for revenue, but if you have to come back and do the same thing all over again in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, that's not productive. As city manager, if we're going to seek a solution through revenues, my recommendation would be do something that has a growth potential. Don't do something that just solves the problem for a year or two. Okay, business license tax. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the business license tax because of what I said. It's a cap. There's a cap on it. And there's a perception on the part of folks that somehow the businesses are getting away with something. They're stuffing money in their pockets. And if only we would simply do, as they say on the internet, if you guys have seen any of these ads, this one weird trick. This one weird trick of the business license tax is going to save us. Well, here we are. Business license tax collections right now in Turlock, and we've got the Monte Vista crossings, and that's great, is $1.3 million. In other jurisdictions, similar in size to us, maybe different economically, Rancho Cordova, they got $585,000 from their business license fees. Pittsburgh has $708,000. Davis is just about our size, maybe a little bit smaller than ours. They do $1.5 million in Davis. Now, and I apologize for the insurance contract font size on these. And here's what I want to get to, and hell, I can't even see it. Okay. If we lifted the cap, and we'd have to go to the public to lift the cap and keep our rate the same. If we took the cap off, this magical cap that's depriving us of all this money, it would only generate about $260,000. So we would add, going to the voters, going through an election, running the risk of yes or no or not motivated, we would go from 1.3 million to 1.5 million. It takes just as many votes to approve a 1% sales tax increase for, what did we say, 14 million, as it does to approve a business license tax increase that would give us 250,000. If you're in for a penny, be in for a pound. Now, that said, that assumes we keep the rate the same, and you could probably play the angles and raise your rates while you lift the cap, but just the sense of, wait a minute, you're only generating 1.3 million now. That's not enough of a tax to even think you're going to generate enough revenue to make a difference. So it's there, and I mention this because people have talked about it, and they've held out hope that somehow the council could do something that might not require a vote, or the people would vote for it because it's a tax not on us, but a tax on the businesses, which, yes, it is, but on the other hand, they're just going to pass it along to us anyway if it were big enough. So that's the business license tax. And most cities have it, and you won't find too many our size that make any more money at it than we do. Again, most of them are less. Here's a transient occupancy tax. This is the beds, heads and beds. You can either use it for a general tax or a special tax. We get about $1.6 million a year from this at a 9% rate. And 3/9 go into tourism, 6/9 go into the general fund, so that supports operations of city government. The 3/9 that go into the tourism, they pay for the events coordinator, they pay for community grants, diversion, branding, and a number of different activities. And that budget for 120 for 18-19 was $260,528. It's less this year because we did repurpose some of the Fund 120 money for things like support of our sports centers in order to reduce the cost of the general fund going in there. They say money's fungible, and that means a dollar doesn't care where it goes. It's kind of like the drinking water doesn't matter whether it's in your sink or the hot water heater. It's all water. It's all money. If it goes in from 120 into 110 into the general fund, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But I want to get to what's the competition look like. We're at 9. Modesto is at 9. Ceres is at 10. Merced is at 10. If we increased it by 1% and we got up to Ceres level, we got another $178,000. If we raised it by 2% and went above them, 356, 3%, we get another 534. Not all of that would go into the general fund. Some of it would go into tourism activities. And so, again, it requires a vote, but it also doesn't yield what we might want it to. 1.6 million here for TOT in the city of Turlock. If you went to Mariposa County where Yosemite is, you know what the tourism is like there, and Marin will help me if I got too far on. I think they do like 11 million a year in Mariposa. 14? 14. I had old numbers. 14 million a year when you're in tourism country. 14 million a year would be nothing. I can only imagine what San Francisco gets, what LA gets. We do okay, but transient occupancy tax is not going to be a game changer for the city when we have, if we released everything, when we have what is essentially a $4 million structural deficit. We've overcome it, we've smothered it, but it's out there, folks, unless you want us to provide much fewer services. Okay, utility user tax. We don't have this at all here. Electricity, gas, water, sewer, phone, sanitation, cable TV, and of course some of these things, sanitation, that goes to the city. So you're right, we wouldn't be taxing ourselves, but this is, not every city does it the way we do. This is the menu of possible places to levy it. Okay, so in Ceres, they've got it, and Modesto, they've got it. Ceres, 3% rate, generates 1.5 million. In Modesto, they have a 6% rate. That generates 20 million, but you have to figure Modesto's that much bigger than we are. So if you look at jurisdictions that are a little bit more like us, City of Alameda, they have a 7.5% rate. They generate 9 million. Indio, out in the desert, 76,000. 6% rate generates 8.5 million. They're probably the closest in size to us of all the cities in the state that do this. Benicia, over on the bay, 28,000. They get 4.5 million. Tulare, 6%. They get 5.6 million. So this is something to consider, but this is not a tax that other people pay. It's going to come up on the cable bill. It's going to come up on the electric bill. It is not something that is being paid, quote unquote, by a company. They're going to pass it right along to us. But it's a different way to levy the tax. Parcel tax, I think I pretty much got all the juice, I squeezed all the juice out of that one. And property transfer tax, that is based on the transfer that takes place when property changes hands. The county's rate is 55 cents per $500 of property value. I think our rate is another 55 cents on top of that. You can see that our transfer tax receipts $223,000. So no matter what and there is a cap on our ability to, I think we can't add it more than $1 to that. So you can see that going in that direction is not necessarily the answer to a looming $4 million gap. So are there any questions I can try and answer at this point? And I apologize for taking so much time. And just, I said I wouldn't read everything. I tried not to. But are there questions about what we've seen so far?
Yes. Bob, I had one quick question, just on the utility tax.
Yeah.
So would that be taxing all the utilities, or would you pick a utility?
Oh,
How exactly is that?
That's a doggone good question. And I would have to get back to you on that. I apologize for not having that at my fingertips. I'm going to assume that you can narrow it because, again, there are some places that if electricity or garbage is a municipal or water is a municipal utility, I don't know that we tax that. So I'll look into that. Okay.
On parcel tax, you can be specific to what kinds of parcels you want to tax?
No.
It's across the board.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's commercial, residential, or what have you.
I can't do anything like undeveloped, high density to try and stimulate something?
No.
No.
It's not, because it's not related to the value. What you're talking about is implicitly the value of the property. That makes it a property tax, just like Prop 13 is designed to address. Okay. Oh,
Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
With the business licenses, when was the last time, or have we adjusted it since we installed it?
I don't believe we have changed the rate since it started.
Okay.
But again, I would kind of direct you back, and I don't want to flip through all the slides, but even places that I would say are aggressive about it and have a good base are not generating much more, than we do with our cap. And taking our cap off would again only yield a certain amount. If we doubled it or tripled it, we still wouldn't get quite to where we are. And I think there would be a point that if we had tried to do it in a significant enough amount, it would engender a great deal of opposition from the businesses.
Another one for you.
Yes, sir.
For the sales tax, do you have any estimate as to how much of our sales tax revenue comes from local residents versus outside spending?
That might be knowable. I don't have that as part of this. We can certainly assume, because of the location of our shopping districts, right? We have the downtown and we have Monte Vista Crossings and the associated areas, that there's probably a non-zero amount from out of town. The question becomes how much, under what circumstances, and what is the competitive advantage? Okay. Members of council, any? Okay. So, all right. So the next question is, well, if we're going to do anything that requires approval, requires public approval, what are the timelines? Now, as I said to you before, we're in a budget situation now that we can do for 1 year, and we can do it for a year. And during this year, we're going to learn a lot of things about ourselves, about what we do, about how we do them. And that will position us to do the same thing for another year. It does not position us to do the same thing for 3 years. I can't stress that enough. So, the earliest we can practically get a revenue measure on the ballot would be November of 2020. That is not soon enough, even with a yes vote, for us to assume those revenues in the 2021 budget, in next year's budget. So that's why I'm talking about 2 years. But these are the steps to put it on the ballot in 2020. Sometime this August or September, there's 3 things to go on. And these are not the legal steps. This is assessing the public interest. This is educating the public, communicating more with the public. In August and September, get direction from council, develop the community engagement strategy, have meetings to educate and receive input from each district, conduct polling in October, December of 2019. That's a pretty full dance card for the next, say, 6 months. Then we get into 2020, and you can see now we're getting into two things. January is get further direction from council based on the findings, and then all of the rest of these, developing the proposal, submitting the resolution to the council, submitting it to the county board, all of these things are what I'll call the legal deadlines. We have to start we have to submit this resolution in May or June of 2020. But that doesn't mean that we can afford not to start working on it now, all right? But those are the legal deadlines, May, June, July 6th, July 14th, July 15th, so on and so on and so on, Election Day, November 3rd, 2020. If we're going to do something with revenue, with tax collection, that's the date that we've got to work toward. Now, there are other ways, we split our revenues, or other entities split revenues with us. We could try and ask for more money. It's certainly not a bad thing to do. Negotiation is always good. But this process makes the city of Turlock the master of its own fate and not reliant upon redistribution from somebody else. Now, that's the hard news. The great news is something that you've seen in this room in recent weeks: development agreements related to cannabis. We are in the process now. We've issued the RFQ. We're asking parties to participate in the program. There are development agreements in place in the city of Ceres. Ceres expects to receive about $2 million. And the voters in 2018 put a tax on cannabis sales. We could throw that in too, but we'd have to have development agreements in place. Now, it certainly looks great, and I have no doubt that this will yield additional revenue for the city. My concern as the manager is how reliable is the revenue. It's kind of like sales tax. Well, if we generate, I'll make up a number, if we generate $2 million from a Walmart store in sales tax, and I'm not sure that's what it is, and I'm probably not supposed to know. Well, gee, if we need $6 million, let's build 3 more Walmart stores. Now, you guys know intuitively that's not going to help because there's only so many consumer dollars out there. We might capture a little bit more, but people are only buying so much stuff, and we can only, and so that's a base. The base is only going to be so much. There's only so much money to spend on marijuana in Stanislaus County and maybe Merced County. Right now, because we are the last ones to the show, everybody else is getting some, we're not getting any. And yes, we'll get some, but my concern would be that it's not reliable. Everything is going to level out, and we'll get some, but we might get up here with a novelty, and then it's going to drop down. Nobody's going to get that 2.2 million. Two places, Ceres and Turlock are not each going to get 2.2 million. They'll probably get 1, and we'll get 1.2, and that's how I think it's going to work. My recommendation as your city manager would be, if we go forward with cannabis and it generates revenue, that we not apply that revenue, at least in the first 2 years, to running city government on a day-to-day basis. You've heard me before, those of you who are riveted to these issues, that we have about, after we take out our encumbrances, Our savings account, our general fund reserve is around $2.3, $2.5 million. That's enough to cover 3 weeks of our general fund expenses. We live paycheck to paycheck. The city has virtually no savings account. If we get revenue, uncertain revenue, revenue that may not be here next year, revenue that may be repealed, revenue that depends almost entirely upon the sufferance of the state government, and more than the state, the sufferance of the federal government being willing to, for the lack of a better phrase, turn a blind eye to certain things. To me, that's not revenue that you build programs on, but it's good to put in the savings account. And obviously, council makes the policies. But as your manager, my first recommendation would be, if we do this, and if we get money, put it in the reserve, keep it for the rainy day. And maybe after a couple of years, we'll be able to figure out, hey, this is not a good source of revenue, or this is great, this is constant, this is just like tax on gasoline. So I've kind of gone out on a limb there with that, but that's something that doesn't require voter approval. That's something that we could begin collecting. Okay. Then we've got Community Facilities District. Again, that's not general fund, and it's not something that getting revenues there is going to make any difference for us. I just want to make sure I had it in case there are any questions. Landscape and lighting districts, we're going to be talking a lot about that in the months ahead. And that's the end of what I got. I know it's long, I apologize, but there are a lot of different moving pieces to this. And some of the answers that I thought when I first got here would, hey, let's just do this, this would be great. Not so much. There'll be more conversation about it. But at the end of the day, this is really a matter for the council to consider and say to staff, Bob, take our people and let's go out and let's start developing this or this or this. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. I think it enlightened the public and us as to what our next task will be. You know, our public safety, the fire department and the police department and our Parks and Recs department have really just stepped up to the plate and have, adopted this way of life. And if we do, make these amendments to our next 12 months or our next 18 months, we could really get past some really fiscal challenges that we've had and move forward with some really positive and forward momentum in the community. So thank you for doing that. We have some challenging days ahead of us trying to figure out what the best avenue would be for the public and for us as a council. And so I want to thank you for all your hard work. I want to thank the fire department and the police department and the parks department for really walking through this very difficult time that we've had and that we're going to have. But I think living paycheck to paycheck is not where the city wants to be. And I think we're going to have to make some tough decisions and really bring the community together collectively with we have one shot to make this better. So, thank you.
Hello, there you are. Hello. Yeah, just a quick question. Now, I know that you've been working on the revenues with staff and everything. I think a meeting or two ago, we had some suggestions from the police union, and I think we've had some stuff from the fire union where they're willing to help find some revenue sources. Have we been inputting their suggestions? Is that coming into any of this?
They're not part of this. They are welcome, and I don't know that I've had any of them actually come up to my desk, but we are willing to collect them, and we hope that whatever they have, they'll submit in a written form and maybe come in and pay a visit. I think we do have an opportunity, but I also think that your managers have done a pretty good job of streamlining operations on a regular basis as much as possible. And there may be some things that they would want to do that are really part of collective bargaining. Your staff, the HR staff and the administrative services staff, I've already told you about this in the budget. We did something this year that could have been done at any time, and that's renegotiate and shop out the administrative part of our health insurance plan. And we reduced our cost by nearly $1 million, something that we should have done whether we had $5 in the reserve, $5 million in the reserve, or $15 million in the reserve. Those are the things that your department heads and your executive staff are doing to make a huge difference.
I know on the calendar for the timeline, you have August listed for starting to engage the community. I think I'm of a position that I've heard a lot from our community that they're not satisfied with the level of service that we're able to provide right now. We've got multiple union groups that have come out here and said that they'll be partners with us in trying to identify what the public's true will is, what they want to see from our city going forward. And I think that the sooner that we can start to initiate the community engagement aspect and working with our partners in all of this, the better off it's going to be for us. It's just, we're right now in a position where every day we go out there, we're putting an unsatisfactory product out in the city of Turlock, and I'd like to work towards bringing our partners into the fold as much as we can.
I appreciate that. I just want to take a minute. I would take issue with the use of the word unsatisfactory. It implies defective in its own way, and it implies a lack of effort. Your staff, the employees of this city, are working at full capacity with minimal resources. They were told years ago, do more with less. Then they were told, do better with less. And I am unfortunately the person who has to stand before you, the residents, and our employees and say, we must do less with less. And so they are resource challenged,
Yeah.
not ambition challenged.
I'll clear that up. You get what you pay for, and we're not. I don't think we're happy with what we're paying for. With the
Yeah.
financial constraints that we have, I don't think the people that I talk to out on the street are not comfortable with what we're able to provide them right now. And that's what I mean.
And I appreciate your joining me in that clarification. There are really three. If I had a whiteboard here instead of in my office, there are three imaginary graphs. Okay, if you expect that revenues are going to stay flat like this, that we're not going to have more coming in, we're going to hold the line on that. Your services are going to go like this. That's a mathematical equation. If you want the services to stay where they are, whatever negative word we'd like to use, be it unsatisfactory or insufficient, if you want to stay at that insufficient level, just to tread that water, we still got to go up. If you want to return services to where they might have been in whatever golden year you want to pick, 2008, 1997, I don't say that flippantly. We all have points when the parks got mowed once a week and the pools were all open, whatever it was. You want to get there with your services, then you're going to need to come up with more revenue like that. Three simple graphs. Stay where we are financially, watch services degrade. Stay where we are with services, you're going to have to reach into your pocket. Have more services at the highest possible quality, like we all deserve, like brings businesses here, like brings residents here. You don't reach into your pocket, you got to reach for your wallet. And I don't like to be the guy who says that, but our systems, our revenue systems, are simply not compatible with a city of 75,000 in the 21st century.
So I know that this is a presentation, so I'm not sure if we have room for a formal direction from council, but I'm comfortable to stand, at least for my belief, that we did during this really difficult budget process, and I know that the community was very involved in watching. We did consciously lower the standard of our city than what it was previously. And now we are feeling the wrath of it even weeks, days after that approved budget. So this is a clear indication that it is needed. We don't have hidden pots of money and bags of money in our offices. It's just, we wish. It's not true. We can't. And it's the indication of what the city really needs to do. And I think it's growth pains. And I think it's an absolute catalyst to start really looking at revenue more seriously. So I guess my question is, what is going to come back to council for a formal direction? Can we do that now to start engaging with the community and our partners within that?
It doesn't cost anything to talk. And I would certainly, if there is a will among the council, that the city manager begin this process, which at some point in the not too distant future will mean that we'll come back and give you an opportunity to take certain kinds of action. Yeah, if I get the direction that you want us to go that way, that would be fine. I can do that. Yeah, I can do that.
I echo what you say. I'm ready to start moving in that direction.
Okay.
This wasn't on, but I think you heard me.
I think I did. And, I want to take a minute. You've heard me praise our department heads and our staff. And it's also appropriate, I think, as Councilmember Larson said, this council made hard decisions. This council based their decisions on facts, on recommendations from professionals, and on their own encounters and discussions with each other and with members of our community. And as Councilmember Larson has noted, you haven't stopped hearing about that. And you have remained resolute. And I think on behalf of the more than 300 employees here at the city, thank you for making tough decisions. Thank you for standing by them. We will try and do our best to give you more tools to respond to the issues in front of this city. And I will take I'll take this direction from council to start the flywheel turning. It's not going to be at full speed for a while, but if that's the sense that I'm looking at these members of council, that there's a majority that say, yeah, start investing staff resources to bring us information for a decision.
I just want to highlight one thing that in your presentation I think is very important for the community to be aware of. The task that we're talking about right now is to gather information, to gather buy-in from the community. So essentially, if we come back in, December, October, around that timeline of 2019, and we say, hey, this is not something that we can theoretically pull off. The community does not want this. We can come back and we can say, fine, then we've heard the community at that level, correct?
And that's correct. And moving in this direction does not preclude other initiatives from taking place at the same time, other efforts to bring revenue to the city. But we work against the timeline. If we wait too long, we can't do anything in November of 2020. That's the downside. We can't wait. We can't wait to find out whether everything else gets exhausted before we start working on this. We have to pursue two tracks at the same time. And doing this doesn't mean we don't have to make a commitment. We don't have to make a commitment to doing this until sometime almost, 9 months from now.
Yeah. So then, essentially, just to get going for the next step right now, would we start looking at workshops, or you still have more work to do before we're ready for community engagement?
I'm going to consult with the finance staff about what we might need to do a workshop, and I'm going to talk to some of my colleagues who have been through this same kind of situation. That's staff time. That's not commitment on the part of this council or anybody else, but it is assessing a little bit further, taking that calendar I gave you or showed you and putting a sharper pencil on what it is we need to do at each of these points.
And you're going to be having a debt plan committee or something? How might that work to help with this?
Well, we've got, and I think with that, are you referring to our PERS obligations?
Well, all of our debt, we need to, I thought you were going to have a committee and start talking about planning out as revenue comes in, how we look at the debt that we have, whether it's our PERS unfunded mandate, whatever the.
Right, and that's a committee that I'm putting together to look at what our obligations are. And I think, keeping our general fund at a certain level it's only one part of the story. We have about 74 million, I think, in unfunded PERS obligations that from different times when we have increased rates or other things have occurred, this is unfunded liabilities in PERS. We pay a certain amount every year in our PERS commitment for current liabilities, for people who are working here now. But then we have to pay another amount to retire the 70-something million in accrued liability. Now, the one good thing, I was looking at these numbers, the one good thing is out of that 70-something million, under PEPRA, the new retirement system, I think we have for fire, I think we have $6,000 in unfunded liabilities, and I think for police it's $23,000. So you see the difference that Public Employee Pension Reform Act, the difference that has made. And there will be good things as we go along. But yes, we have that debt. That's general fund, primarily general fund debt, and that's the area that we're most concerned about. Managing our public resources in the general fund will have an impact when we borrow money for non-general fund purposes on those interest rates. And but just think about that. We paid $5 million. We paid $5 million early a couple of years ago. That $5 million, that wasn't even 10% of what we've got out there. It is a big looming thing. And remember this: PERS costs went up this year in this budget by $500,000. Same number of employees, no raises. $500,000. PERS is a hungry beast.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, that just brought in another question that was sitting around in the back of my head. We know we've got the PERS. Are there any other obligations that we have not covered yet that are going to hit us?
I'm sorry, was there?
Monsters in the closet.
Well, yeah, I do think about that. I also worry about flash floods. But one of the things, and I got to take a sharper look at this, I'll be honest, but I believe our exposure is minimal. Retiree medical care. We have certain provisions for medical care for retirees, but it's not widespread and it's not as big a threat as it is in other jurisdictions. And just so you have a sense of the scale on the pensions, our PERS pensions, not the PEPRA ones, they are funded at anywhere between 67 and 71%. That's not great, although it's better than some states. But, we've only got enough in cash to meet 75% of our obligations if we had to pay it all off right now. That's going to be a problem for us. Just that alone, council member, regardless of anything else we've got out there. And remember, our PERS rates are based on what? The economy. They're based on returns gained in real estate and the stock market. We all remember not too long ago when PERS took a complete pasting, particularly in real estate. They're investors like everybody else. If the market gets shaky, they're going to come back to us and say, we need more cash to come in.
As well, that we have the assessment districts in the building department as well that need to be a part of that talk.
Well, that's part of
Their
the,
debt?
that's part of the talk. I've already kind of mentally, and in my discussions, we've already accounted for that
Sure.
in the reserve.
But
That it's going to be, that the reserve is there. We will need help on the assessment districts. We are not in a position to unravel that all ourselves, just the time commitment with over 200 accounts. You'll see a request for proposals probably in September to bring somebody in, and that will also give us time to put everything in as much order as we can. But they'll come in to make recommendations to us not only about what our exposure is and where the money needs to go, but how do we change the management of our assessment districts? How do we make it easier for us to run them on a day-to-day basis? And how do we prevent ourselves from falling behind again? You know, this was a pure case of 3 different departments, each having responsibility for a piece. And when everybody's responsible, who do you hold accountable? So we're going to be changing that. Engineering fund, you hit that one out of the park this year in the budget. We've identified the $2.5 million that we owe. And for the first time in 5 years, the general fund actually appropriated money to the engineering fund to cover the legitimate general fund obligations that had simply been ignored before, which was great because when you're not paying the $500,000 you owe to the engineering fund, you got $500,000 to spread around. You know, it's a plus and it's a minus. You know, you're not paying it over here, and that means you've got it over there to spend and to create new obligations. So we're looking for a seamless approach to round all of those obligations up.
Thank you for the presentation. You also have some updates from your departments?
I think we will put those in regular order.
I thought we already made a motion.
That.
Yes, sir.
We don't have to, okay, you didn't have to do a bank shot on that, yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted roads or fire first, which.
Well, let's do fire. Like to welcome Interim Chief Carlson to the podium. Thank you. All right.
Great. Mayor, council, citizens, thank you. Up here now to address some questions and concerns you may have regarding the fire department, the current staffing of the fire department. I assume you have all gotten phone calls, emails, I know you have, about what's going on with us right now. So I've got a quick, probably 5-minute presentation to kind of work you through that and then be happy to answer any questions that you're going to have. So with the implementation of the 1920 budget, which we are all very aware of, we basically had to take a fundamental look at how we do business. It couldn't remain the same. Normally, our normal staffing pattern up until this day is 4 stations with 13 firefighters on duty 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Each of your 4 stations has a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter, and the shift is overseen by a battalion chief. That's been our normal staffing pattern since 2006. With this model, we're able to cover the entire city, each 4 districts, and the yellow you can see where each of the stations are, and we're able to maintain a 5-minute response time to emergencies within the city, which is much better than the national standard. Every year, as the city gets bigger, we're able to come up with ways to diminish it. And in the fire service, seconds count, definitely minutes count. It's all about emergency response for us. All this while we're responding to, last year, just over 6,800 emergencies, which included 9,500 total engine company responses. Many emergencies need more than 1 engine. Fires need all of them. So with the new budget, this new reality, changes needed to be made. To meet our task goal of reducing the budget, fire is 25% of your general fund budget, and we were tasked to reduce about 25% of our budget, or about $1.1 million. We did this through 4 main areas. To begin with, our budget doesn't have fluff in our budget. We run day to day and we come right up against it every year. So to reduce that amount of money, we focused on 4 main costs. Reducing overtime costs. Our normal overtime each year approaches $500,000. This year we have $100,000. We defunded 2 vacant line positions. Last year we had 48 allocated line positions, now we have 46. So those 2 kind of work in conjunction. The less people and less overtime is going to have a double effect on how much staffing is available. Additionally, we defunded 1 chief officer position, and as of right now, we are 50% less in our chief officers than we were in June. It's just myself and Fire Marshal Gomez right now. And lastly, we deferred equipment and vehicle replacement funds that we save up for every year, which is something we can do for the short term, but our engines are still aging, our safety equipment, all this stuff needs to be replaced. So showing this to point out, when we carefully came up with this number, it wasn't to take the easy way and just take people off the streets. We tried to balance this as best we could to show the minimal amount of impact for the citizens. And there is an impact, but at some point, we still have to keep the lights on, put fuel in the engines, and buy safety equipment. And I get asked, well, why can't you just take it out of the rest of the budget? And I got to feel right now we're well into the 90% of the costs that we can't control, salary and benefits and that. So that's how we got to our total reduction. So with that, we had to come up with a new staffing plan. No longer will our budget afford us 13 people on duty. And there was several ideas on how to approach this. This is what we've come up with now. When there's 12 people on duty, instead of 13, we'll staff, our plan's already staffed the engines, 3 of them with 3, and 1 engine will be taken out of service and replaced with a quick response vehicle. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later, what exactly that is, and then a battalion chief over that. If we were to need to go down to 11 or 10, that would necessitate a brownout of a station, which is something I'm going to talk about in a second as well.
Gary, I apologize
Absolutely.
for interrupting, because you're doing great here, but there's a point I want to make sure you've assumed it, I've assumed it, because we know this. We still have a staffing expectation of 13 on every shift. 3 people in each of 4 houses and 1 battalion chief. All of these things that we're talking about here are how the department will respond when somebody calls in sick, or you cannot fill a position when somebody goes on vacation. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, and I'm going to get into that
I just want to make sure,
second.
I don't want anybody to start thinking that we're going from 13 to 12 as a default.
Right,
Okay.
I will absolutely get to that in just a second. No, so this is just what it's going to be like, and the city manager's right, our normal staffing is still 13 on duty every day. And to accomplish that goal of maintaining that, the numbers are, it's a sliding matrix. I need 48 line positions and $500,000 in overtime to maintain that. If I have 42 positions, I'm going to need $740,000 in overtime. If you gave me 54 positions, I wouldn't need overtime. So it's a sliding scale, and it's based on the time, the vacation and holiday time, comp time, sick time, all the things that constitute people getting hurt, things like that naturally happen in the fire service. With the budget as it currently is, with 46 people and $100,000, that number is not attainable. So have to plan for what's going to happen in the future to stay within the budget. This is what would happen based on the staffing levels that we're going to have each individual day, and they fluctuate from day to day. Some days people have vacations, some days people call in sick, and they're back and forth. A drop dead minimum that we would utilize would be 10 people. That beyond that would mean browning out or doing some other thing with 2 engines, which is 50% of our force, and that's what the remaining overtime budget is there to protect against, which is $100,000. However, this is kind of new territory for us. Conversations I've had with the city manager and with the existing budget, our goal for this year upcoming is going to be to maintain a minimum staffing of 12. With a minimum staffing of 12, we will not be forced to brown out a station. We will be in what we were calling a diminished staffing pattern. And I'm going to explain a little bit of the difference between a brownout and diminished staffing. Brownout is your station's closed. If you live in Station 4's district, Station 3's district, and we didn't have a full staffing model, your station will be closed for the day. And the firefighters, the extra firefighters that would happen to be there that day, whether there's one or two of them, would be dispersed to a different station. A diminished staffing pattern happens when there's 12 people. We would keep 3 stations in service, and 1 station would be switched from a fire engine to an SUV. And there were reasons for that, which I'll explain in a second. Why not? I've heard, why not just keep 2 people on the engine? We used to run with 2 people on an engine when I first started. There were 2-person engine companies. And the simple answer, well, there's a couple answers to that. One, it's not a safe operation. Running 2 people on something that big and that complex is not safe. And the only feasible way to do it is if it's the captain and the engineer that are still left on duty. Meaning the firefighter is the one that is causing the diminished staffing. Well, the captains and the engineers or the older guys have more vacation, have more comp time, are more prone to getting hurt. So more often than not, they're the ones causing it. And I can't run a fire engine, an engine with a captain and a firefighter or an engineer and a firefighter. Hence, moving them into a quick response vehicle. There's going to I'm sure you've heard in the last 3 or 4 days, we've gone to this model. We've used a quick response vehicle in 2 of the districts, and it is a diminished level of staffing, but the other option between doing that is browning out a station. And both options have been talked about quite extensively, and as your chief, I recommend the quick response vehicle, which is what we are implementing. The reason for that, simple, if you can tell, the District 4 happened to be browned out for the day and nobody's there. If you had a call in that district, it would take an additional 1 to 2, 2 to 3, or 3 to 5 minutes to get, as you get farther north and farther west in that district. And remember I said response times matter. Same thing, additionally, if District 1 was browned out. This is with every district. Running the quick response vehicle, which is what we're doing, saves those response times. Now, candidly, it is a different way to do business. If you live next door to Fire Station 4 and your house catches on fire, there's no fire engine there. You're going to get 2 people showing up in the SUV. There are things they can do to set up command and do things, and you're still going to wait for the rest of the engines to get there, because on fires, all engines go. However, with that response vehicle, we run 65% of our calls are medical aids. If your child is choking, if he falls in a pool, or if you have a cardiac emergency, having 2 people there, trained people get there right away within that 5 minutes is an absolute benefit. And you're going to hear people say that's the wrong way to go. We need to close that station and upstaff the other stations. Well, I just can't get past the fact that if in my district, and my kid starts choking, I'd rather have 2 people get there in 2 minutes than 4 people get there in 10 minutes. And it's just a simple math number to me. So, in a nutshell, we are operating differently than we did last year. I'm watching the budget every day, every week, to capture every dollar I can and try to replace our staffing and live within the budget we're operating under. This is not a better option by any means than we used to do, but I can tell you that everybody down this line will tell you they're doing everything differently too, and none of them, are happy about the options they have to be. It's just the reality we're in. So, I anticipate running a diminished staffing pattern 40 to 50% of the time. Just strictly on numbers. I'm gonna implement it. We're gonna run with it for a month, and I'm gonna reevaluate and see if there's anything we can do that's gonna make it better. I'm gonna constantly evaluate the situation. So, as of now, the goal is to keep all 4 stations open, keep our response times to a minimum, and serve the community as best we can and professionally as we can to get it until we can generate revenue and get through this time. Sorry about that. With that, is there any questions or anything I can answer? I know that you've probably been inundated with.
We have been inundated with, comments and questions and we feel your pain, trust me. So, we're there for you guys and, the hard decisions that we've had to make, we didn't want to make those, but we had to. So, we understand and I want to thank you for the time that you've put into this. You got thrown into a situation that, not many of us could rise up to that challenge. So I really commend you and your staff and your fire department. I know that, we had a situation this weekend at Pedretti and your fire engineers are consummate, professionals. So I thank them for that and I thank you for all of your hard work and stepping up to the plate and really coming together as a team and we will get through this. So, I don't know why you started with District 4, but I'm kidding. Ouch. Thank you.
It's on District 1 now, so.
I do want to echo a lot of what you said. I know you're in a very, very difficult position right now, and I do appreciate all the hard work you're putting in, and I'm confident that we'll be able to look back on this time and appreciate a lot of the difficult challenges, difficult decisions we had to make. I had a couple questions for you. You talked about the 40 to 50% about diminished pattern. Do you have an estimate as to how frequently we're going to be experiencing brownout with the 10 or the 11 or 10?
Yeah, absolutely. Conversation with the city manager yesterday and looking at the budget, and this is uncharted. Usually I'm pretty good with numbers, but these is kind of an uncharted thing for me. From this point on, we are going to try to maintain 12 to keep all 4 stations open. As we see how it plays out and how the budget, the numbers look, we may have to readdress it and look at 10, and I will advise you before that, or 10 or 11 before that happens. But for the near future, the goal is to keep all 4 stations open and try to make it within that budget.
We had a brownout at District 4. No, we haven't.
We have not had a brownout
Okay.
yet
It
in the
was
city. We've had diminished staffing.
Okay.
Today, we are full staffing. We have 13 on duty, which, should happen more than 50% of the time. It's just, we have some known ones, I know from vacations, about 33% of the time, and then I'm factoring in another 10 to 15% for the unknown, which are the sick time and things like that. Now, if we have a firefighter or 2 get injured and is out for a long period of time, that's going to change things.
And then I wanted to ask, in the previous meeting, there was a comment about there were 12 lives saved over the course, I think, over this calendar year. With the diminished staffing levels, would we have been able to ensure that those, you probably offhand can't speak to all of them.
Everyone's dynamic. That's hard to say. I know you were
Yeah.
referring to the saves we would get, but I guarantee with at least some people showing up with a trained medical in 5 minutes, we'll save more people showing up 10 minutes later, because we do run 65% of our calls on medical, and that's what you are talking about.
And the last question I have for you, is it possible for us to pull from other surrounding fire to be able to, in the event that we're going to these lower diminished levels, to be able to plug in with other support units?
Right. You mean in other cities and districts? We absolutely have not only automatic aid agreements with Modesto, Ceres, and consolidated partners. We also have mutual aid agreements with Turlock Rural and the surrounding areas, and it's reciprocal. 2 days ago, Modesto had 2 very large fires at the same time. We sent up an engine, a battalion chief. I backfilled for the battalion chief here, and we're able to manage. I was on the phone with Merced asking them to step up if we needed them, but so it's all the time reciprocal. On any working structure fire, on our first alarm assignment is an engine from Ceres and a battalion chief from Ceres, and it's reciprocal. We do that for them, just because It's very manpower intensive. And aside from Modesto, nobody around here really has that much staffing, although Modesto was drained down to 0 2 nights ago as well. So,
I know it's going to sound like we're all echoing, but I just want to also echo to commend you for the effort and for you to step up to this. I really, this presentation has been so informative to really show exactly what we see and what we're going to expect throughout this difficult budget situation that we've just endorsed. That we're asking you to do less with less, and it's very difficult because going to a department and to an entire city of departments that strive for excellence. And that's on us, and we've acknowledged that. But thank you for this, Chief Carlson. Thank you so much. And I have one question. It has to do with the quick response vehicles. I know that they're medically trained. There will be no time difference with a medical call, emergency call, and that's what we're really talking about. But what if there is a structure fire or a fire in a district with the 2-man vehicles? Will those? Can you kind of go into that?
sure.
Thank you.
Anytime there's a working residential structure fire, all 4 stations go. So normally you're going to get 13 people. Now you're going to get 12. In the event that happens to be the quick response vehicle first on scene, I'm drafting an operational document for them to know exactly what to do. They'll get on scene, they'll secure utilities, they'll do size ups, and as the next engine comes in, they'll be able to get to work that much faster. That being said, it probably will happen, that there's something like that will happen in that district, and if your fence is on fire and it takes that much longer to get water there, now your grass is going to be on fire too, and it's, because fire doubles in size every 60 seconds. So there will be an effect. This is not a better model, but there's absolutely things that first crew can do on any call. Vehicle accidents, hazmats, they just don't have the same capabilities of their engines, but there's a lot of setup work involved in getting ready to fight a fire. It's like an orchestrated dance, and you need people there on scene to direct people.
Yeah, and also I want to say thank you. And I want to thank you for the information, because this is what we need the city out there that's watching. They need to know exactly what's going on. Again, I've made comments before. We're constantly hearing the negative and misinformation, and so anytime we can give out the real information so that everybody understands what exactly is happening. Yeah, it's not the best model, we all know that. It's what we have to do until we can make it better. And I appreciate your efforts, so that's all I have to say.
Question. In the instance where we have let's say, diminished staffing at District 4, would it make, hypothetically speaking, it's hers again, would it be possible to do a situation where maybe like District 2 is stationed, or like that there's a more fluid stationing as opposed to being at the firehouse, like the fire truck being placed more closer to that area to be able to mitigate the differences?
So during the day, maybe a misconception is that they're not just in their stations all day long. There's so much business they're doing during the day, business inspections and programs and training. So they're kind of all over the place. So what you're talking about is in the evenings, and that would be very hard to accomplish. However, one thing I do that I neglected to mention is, as the station's being diminished, I am looking at what is occurring in the city that day. I would not close Station 1 during the Christmas parade. I would not diminish the staffing at Station 1 during the Christmas parade. I wouldn't diminish the staffing Station 2 during the fair, or Station 3 and 4 during commencement exercises. So it's all, it's based on some risk analysis on how we're gonna staff this. Stations, the way they're situated in town right now, anything coming in where they're right on top of each other generally. So they're actually in a very good spot where they are. They're obviously more cognizant on which station is diminished, and they will call out resources quicker than they normally would had they not be. So they're constantly picking up the slack for each other.
So, just a couple things, just for clarification, we've seen a lot of things out there, misinformation. I know you said it, but one more time, have we had a brownout?
We have not had a brownout, and the goal is to not have a brownout.
Right.
I can't promise that. It's all going to be budget related and what happens going forward, but for now, the goal is to leave all 4 stations open.
And in accordance to your deployment of your personnel, has any of us electeds made that decision for you or come to you and said you should be doing X, Y, and Z?
No, this was my decision alone. I've been a firefighter for 25 years. I started as a volunteer. I worked my way up. I worked on 2-person engine companies, 3-person engine companies, occasionally a 4-person. There are definitely people in the world that know better than me, but I know Turlock pretty well. This was, after weighing all the options available to me, this was my decision alone. And honestly, it's not, I don't have consensus with the firefighters, even under my control. They like other options. And like I've told each of them, they will all be very professional. They would do their jobs as they're told and to the utmost of their ability. That being said, they don't necessarily agree with me. This is the option that I want to run with right now, because I still cannot justify in my mind when I can have people there and your child is choking across the street from that station, having people respond in the quickest response possible. It's in my mind, it's a no-brainer. But maybe next month it'll be changed. I don't know.
Understood. So on Saturday, we all got together and we're talking about mission, vision, and such, and it was collective agreement that we want to make sure that each of our departments, that we're giving additional options to let them do the best that they can with what they have. And let's just kind of see if there's something else out there that would enhance it and make it better for each of the departments. And so having said that, I'm pretty sure that I can speak on behalf of my colleagues that the health and safety of our employees and our citizens is our priority. And we appreciate what you guys are doing, so we hope that you can work through this. If it becomes a position that we have to figure out something different, I'm certain that we will. I'm thankful that you're trying to look through it in a different lens and see if we can provide the service to make sure everyone's safe.
Thank you.
So is Turlock safe?
Turlock is safe, yes.
Thank you.
It could be safe.
Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted from your updates?
Mr. Bray, would you
Mr.
like
Bray.
to?
Roads.
Well,
No, it was part of the motion. All updates.
thank you, Chief.
I move for the bathroom.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight I'll give a brief update on 3 different topics. Construction projects we have going on around town, major ones at least, an update on our transit system, and finally an update on our trenching ordinance that was recently enacted. So first off, you may or may not realize we have construction along West Main. We have for a while. Progress is occurring on a daily and weekly basis. It is slower than we had anticipated. We have run into numerous issues, as what's typical when you have a large transportation project and you're digging in the ground, you find things you normally wouldn't find. So there's those instances that have had slowed the contractor up, and there's some other nuances associated with the construction. But we are pushing the contractor to double their workforce, to work Saturdays, do everything they can to complete the paving part of the project and get the road back opened. Initially, our goal was to have the paving open in front of the school before school starts. It's looking like that is going to be difficult, but we are still going to be mandating that they try and hit that target. Currently, we just poured some concrete sidewalk on the north side of West Main between roughly Lander and almost down to West Avenue South. We should have the rest of that sidewalk poured and about half of the curb and gutter poured this week also. We'll continue with the curb and gutter and the concrete work in the coming weeks between the curb and gutter and the sidewalk and the driveways and the curb ramps. All of those have to be done before we can start paving. Next week will be our last and final week of underground construction. We have a utility line that we'll be installing at the intersection of Tully and West Main. There will be a closure during the daytime of westbound traffic between Soderquist and West Main, but it will be open during nighttime. The contractor will place trench plates out so people can drive through the intersection safely and still travel westbound. The next construction project is the Folkerth Interchange project. That project is moving along as well. We have the TID irrigation improvements that were required to be relocated prior to the construction of the new southbound on-ramp. So a majority of the TID work has been completed. The construction of the southbound on and off ramps have started. If you drive by, you'll see those ramps are considerably further to the west. That's part of the design, and as it relates to Caltrans intersection spacing between signalized intersections and their on and off ramps. So that work has started. There has been some paving to Folkerth Road underneath the freeway, which was very much needed for sure. What that does is that it's more of a stopgap measure that'll get us through the construction. At the end of all the construction activities, the road will be overlaid in its entirety. So it looks like it's some patchwork right now, but it's there to serve more of a wearing course until we're ready for the final overlay. That's the update for the construction project. So if you have any questions on the construction project before I move on, I'll be happy to answer those.
The delays that we're experiencing on some of the mains, on Main, are those old roads? You're finding new things that you don't expect. When we get the estimates and the timelines early on, are they giving us a timeline originally?
There is a schedule that's prepared by the contractor at the beginning of the project.
Yeah. Is it possible for future contracts to insert some sort of fee structure associated with delays?
Well, so we have a fee structure. Now it's called delay damages, but it used to be referred to as liquidated damages. And so what it is, it's an amount that the agency sets, so the city of Turlock would set it in our contract, the value of work that a delay represents to the city if a contractor goes beyond a specified completion date. So either we have a specified completion date or we have a number of working days that we allow the contractor to perform the work. If the contractor exceeds the working days or they don't complete all the work within those, by a reason of within their control, they are assessed that delay damages. So this project, the delay damage is $3,500 a calendar day. So if a contractor takes 10 extra days to complete and the work was within their control, we would charge them a deductive change order of $35,000. It's hard to anticipate the buried unknown utilities. Those are things that are not seen as within the contractor's control. So those are instances where the city would grant additional working days of which those delay damages wouldn't apply.
And these buried unknown utilities, do they exist somewhere in some old files that we just haven't digitized?
Not always, no.
No.
There was a underground utility storage tank along West Main. It had old petroleum product that was still, there was some product in there. We had to hire an environmental firm to come out, do the soil testing, remove the tank in a compliant manner and dispose of it. That whole time, the contractor was down from working within that area. There were other areas that they could work on, but it is part of the contributing factors of the delay.
Is there any opportunity to, where you said not always, they're not always some hidden in some file in a filing cabinet somewhere, but is there opportunity for us to be able to improve our system by doing a digitization process on those files?
Yeah, there is, for sure. Not all of our files are digitized. They're not all easily accessible. Sometimes a lot of it is more of historic knowledge. As people retire, maybe they worked on a project 25 years ago and they know about some buried concrete that if you would have asked them, they would have been able to tell you. That being said, the plans, there's there's a curve that I like to draw, and I won't do it here because I don't have paper. We really do need a whiteboard. But the amount of time that you spend on a plan in the planning phase, you're going to pay X dollars for the amount of hours that you spend. And as you approach spending a whole lot of time in making the plans quote unquote perfect, there is also an additional but opposite curve that says as little amount of time you spend on a project plan, you're going to have increased change orders. And so naturally, you're going to have those lines intersect. And so we know and we anticipate that we're going to have construction change orders as they come up. We try to hit that spot, so we're utilizing the resources the most efficiently possible.
Yes, first I want to say, at least we haven't found any dinosaur bones or anything like that that's going to stop the project, so that's a good thing. But I think since I see this every single day, I see that people are working and the progress is moving. There's been a few hiccups, but on the most part, it's going fairly well. The one thing, I did find out that we're going to have some issues with the street lighting. I guess we have to change, we have some problems with the lighting that we didn't know we were going to have. Will that be another change order coming down the road, or?
Yes, it will. The plans originally called to relocate the existing street lighting, with the few exceptions of there were a couple we knew we couldn't relocate just due to the age and the degradation of the facilities. As the contractors got in there and they started disassembling the street lights to try and relocate them, they're not able to safely say that they can preserve them and relocate them. The lights are also so old that we cannot get parts to replace them, so we will be replacing all of the lights with a like product, and that will be an additional change order. The cost to relocate those are costs that we don't have to pay for, so there is some offset there, but that is something that will be brought back at a later date.
Thank you.
Excellent. So the transit update. So just a reminder, this week and this whole month of July, the transit system, Turlock Transit, as well as all of the other regional START series and the MAX are all free. And there are no, what's the word I'm looking for? Transfers, yeah, transfer costs, yeah. So the fares are free, the transfer costs are free for the entire month. This is all made possible by a grant through LC-TOP. It's Low Carbon Transportation, I forget the other acronyms, but it's a state-funded grant that all of the transit operators got together and applied for to provide for increased use of the transit system during the month of July. It also coincides with the fair. We looked at our ridership for last week, which was the first week of this promotion, and compared to the previous week, so the last week of June, ridership was up 17% over the previous week. And when you compare it to the previous year of the same week, so the first week of July in 2018, the ridership's up 39%. So it is proving that there is an interest, and we're also excited that more people are on the bus and are able to see the great services that we're providing. So you have guys any questions on the transit? Excellent. Okay, and lastly but not leastly, we have an update on the trenching ordinance. And so, as you know, this council passed a trenching ordinance, which, not really a trenching ordinance, a revision to the city standards that address the trenching that's done throughout the city of Turlock. After that standard was passed, new construction that came in to get a permit, those new standards then applied for. So there may be some confusion that after that standard was passed, all new trenches would then adhere to that standard. Well, if there were either capital projects that were already in the works, so works that your city staff has contracted out with private companies to come in and cut services or do any sort of road work, or if there were new services, if there were new private developments that came forward with permits, but they got their permits issued prior to the passage of that, they just hadn't performed their work, then they're under and they're held to the old standard. So as new development is conditioned, they're conditioned to the newer standard, which is, you know, at least a full lane width if it's a parallel trench, and if it affects multiple trenches, they're going to restore the travel lanes for both of the affected lanes. So that is in effect for new projects that come forward. For city projects, that city staff initiates and performs. So if we have to run a new water line or a sewer line, we have to connect to someone's service because they had a plug or a failure or something. Currently, our staff would go out there and cut the trench so that they can get the utilities in. They would come back and pave it in a temporary manner. And then, since city staff doesn't currently have the required equipment to perform the work up to the new standard, we are logging and maintaining a list of all of these locations, of which we would generate once we get to X number, whether it's 15, 20, 30, 50 locations, of which we would identify them and put it out for a contractor to bid on and come for and do the work that way. It's similar to the work that we used to do 10, 15 years ago. And prior to that, where we would hire a contractor to come back and pave our trenches. We just don't currently retain the equipment to be able to do that right now. So we have a list of locations, and so I'm sure you have received notifications that people are cutting into the road and they're not adhering to the new standards. I know I have too. And it's a matter of, one, was it private development that was conditioned under the old standard? Or two, is it work that city staff is doing and we're maintaining a list, and we will then be going back out and repairing that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Once we've completed a round of temporary paving and contracting, would it be possible for us to do a cost-benefit analysis to identify whether or not it makes sense for us to be exploring actually investing in the equipment needed? I went out with the street maintenance team, and I think there's a lot of limitations on what they can be doing to maintain our streets. And if we are spending quite a bit of money in this process, it might be time for us to be having a conversation about reshifting some of our
Yeah, I think it's something we can explore for sure.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back to public participation. I have Diane Bartlett, Turlock Library. I know, they're really informed.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council, members of the community. My name is Diane Bartlett. I'm the supervising librarian here at the Turlock Public Library. And I'd like to come and let you know about some of the highlights of our programs. I'd like to start out by thanking Mayor Bublak for coming out and participating in our story time with the mayor. Everybody had a great time, at least that's the way it sounded like to me, and I was at the desk and they were in the children's area having a great time. So thank you. We're looking forward to next time. There's still time to sign up for our summer reading program. We have a challenge for every age, even those of you who are here tonight. This program ends August the 6th. We partner with various folks. This Thursday, the 11th, from 12 to 1, we'll be partnering with Community Hospice. They're going to be offering a Self-Defense 101 class. Reservations are necessary, and you can reserve a spot by calling them at 578-6300. So our story times that we have regularly, this current session runs through the end of July. We'll resume in September, but we are continuing our Tuesday programs. The big one coming up is on the 30th of July, our annual Harry Potter program. It was so popular last year that we are expanding the time. It'll be from 3 to 5. In July, every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I am leading a Readers Theater group. This is for all ages, adults to kids. All your readers are welcome to come. The group that met with me last Wednesday had a great time. You are certainly welcome to come and join us. Our escape rooms are filling up fast. This one for this week is all full, but we have one coming up August 9th and 10th. It's a Wizard of Oz theme. If that date doesn't work out for you, this month, all during July, we are celebrating Scooby-Doo's 50th anniversary with a mystery within the library. Come on in, read the witness statements, and decide who the ghost is. Everyone who guesses gets a treat. So with that, thank you so much for your attention. We will see you at the library. Thank you.
Milt Treeweiler.
Mayor, council, city staff, and fellow Turlock citizens, I want to start by sharing my political position. I am not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Libertarian, I'm not a Peace and Freedom, I'm not a Green Party, I'm actually nonpartisan, and I think that gives me sometimes an objective look and an open mind in what's being said. I want to read a quote that I read to you before from U.S. Supreme Court Justice Robert H. Jackson. It's not the function of our government to keep the citizen from falling into error. It's the function of the citizen to keep the government from falling into error. A democracy requires responsibility on the part of the citizens. To be a responsible Turlock citizen, we need to address the city council and the city staff. And I believe the 3-minute time limit is, for comments is not long enough for most Turlock citizens, and I recommend we raise that back to 5 minutes or possibly 4 minutes as a compromise. And so far, we had 5 citizens, including our county supervisor, who recommend this. We're unique here in Turlock. We're not Modesto, we're not Fresno, we're not Stockton, we are Turlock. And we're unique. First of all, one thing, we have a special sign ordinance. It enhances the value of our city. Our city sign ordinance was vented and studied by all the different groups in Turlock. It took 6 or 7 years to complete. It is unique to our city. And again, I remind you, we're not Stockton or Las Vegas. This is a good thing. Next, I want to comment on the Stanislaus Regional Water Authority, the SRWA. In an excerpt from Phil Mateer on KCBS Radio titled Repairs Underway for Salesforce Transit Center Authority in San Francisco, he says, and this is for all people to understand about our water authority, an authority is a bureaucracy running the show and elected officials that think they're in charge, but they're not really in charge, it's the staff. Nobody puts a cost-to-benefit ratio on these things. These start out by initial bids that are overseen by politicians but run by staff, and as a result, we can end up way over budget. That causes the need to borrow money and raise service rates. So, just something we need to be thinking about. Lastly, the motto for most cities, in my opinion, is we trust in the almighty dollar. And hopefully that's not what we have here in Turlock. That isn't what we have, and hopefully that's what we will continue not to have. And I just had a question for our city attorney, Doug. What would the council or the city need to do if they want to increase the talk time from the 3 minutes we now have it to back to the 5 minutes, or maybe as a compromise 4 minutes? Thank you, Doug.
I have no other blue cards. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Oh, dang it. Oh, yes.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Brianna Gonzalez. I am the district representative for Congressman Josh Harder. I've had the pleasure to meet some of you, but not all. I just want to let you know that I'll be attending these meetings more regularly, so we have a better idea of what's going on locally. And in addition to a district representative, I am also the grants coordinator, and not all congressional offices have this position. So what I do essentially is kind of identify grants that you guys, that the cities could possibly apply to. I have the Congressional Research Services that can help also with grant research. And we also have workshops that pertain to different grants. So right now I'm working with someone from FEMA to get them down to our district to talk about an assisted firefighters grants or safer grants that could possibly help our firefighting situation. Let's see. Also, just so you know, we have a really robust casework program in our office. So if any of your constituents have any federal issues with any federal agencies, please send them our way and we can try to help. And that's about it. Do you have any questions?
No, but make sure you leave your information. 'cause
I do. I have my
a lot of
cards
us
and
need
I
that.
also have flyers to hand out.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank the congressman for that effort.
Of course.
Any other person? Okay, we will close the public participation. We're going to take a five-minute break.
Mayor, right before
Yes,
you,
sir.
just to answer
Go ahead.
Milt's question, we'd have to change,
Sorry.
we'd have to change the ordinance back, so it would require an ordinance amendment process.
Thank you.
Okay, so we would have to change just
Well, I know how to, not with this. All right, let's get this going again. Yeah. Okay, this is a motion waiving reading of all ordinances on the agenda except by title. I need a motion and a second.
I move. Second.
We have a motion by,
You better wait for the clerk.
I better wait for the clerk. Okay. So we have a motion and a second over here. Are you with us? I'm sorry, second, over, motion and second.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
and if you'll call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ariano? Yes. Councilmember Nisrati?
Yes.
Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. Consent,
Wait, before we move forward,
I'm sorry.
can I move to have items 9D and 9E moved to as soon as possible, since we've got some people in the audience? Oh,
you mean 8D,
yes, 8, there we go. 8,
8D,
E, and 8E. I think we've got two groups in the audience that are hanging out, maybe be able to,
okay, is that a motion?
yeah.
And a second?
Right after consent calendar?
Sure, after the consent?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
So, okay, so with consent, is there any items to be pulled off? I'm sorry, but we need to vote on that
We need
first.
to vote, yeah.
Okay.
We're taking that order.
All in favor of doing that, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, say no. Okay, we will do that. Consent calendar, is there anything to be pulled?
Yes, I would like to pull 6K, please.
Okay,
And I would like to pull 6L.
K and L will be pulled, and other than that, a motion to accept the rest?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, clerk call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ariano?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Nisrati? Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. We will pull item K, and it looks like Mr. Cook's ready to go.
Good evening, Mayor Bublak, members of the council. Item K is rejecting all bids for the request for bid we sent out for aggregate, asphaltic concrete, and related materials, and asking the council if we can re-advertise that bid. Basically, we periodically purchase asphalt, gravel, sand, road base, that type of thing, to do trench repairs. And we put this out to bid to 9 different vendors. We only got one response. We felt the bid was on the high side, and we'd like the council to reject all bids and re-advertise that bid. So with that, I'd be happy to answer your questions for Councilman Bursker.
Yes, Mike, yeah, and I saw all that, and I understand that, but you know me, when it comes to rejecting, I always have the notion that, do you think that we are really going to get it a cheaper bid? I mean, because I never see things come back lower. Things always go up, so that's the only thing concerning me. Anytime we have rejected a bid because it's too high, is this like really overly, I saw the price per ton, but I didn't really know compared, I didn't have anything to compare it to, so how exorbitant is this high?
So we have a couple of purchase orders for small purchases with Central Valley Concrete and with Intenair and I think Merced. It's significantly lower than this by much smaller quantities. So we feel with additional outreach and we will get a better response that will lower the price.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that's.
I'll open it to public. Anyone wishing to ask any questions in regard to that? Mr. Puffer. Sorry, Mr. Cook, I saw you running.
Your buddy, they're friends, you know.
Uh-oh.
The
3 minutes.
Hadn't started yet.
and I was just commenting to Milt, come up here with your thoughts organized. With the new state money for road repairs and stuff like that, I think all the contractors are probably gobbling up these materials as fast as possible to try and do public works. Was there any, I guess my question would be, was there any contact with the remaining other non-bidders as to why they didn't want to bid on it? And my other thought would be like Councilman Esquer, I don't think his price is going to go down. Thank you.
Any other people wishing to ask questions? Okay, we will close public participation. Mr. Cook, are you willing to answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, we're a fairly small fish in the sea and we bid this out during the early part of the construction season. So I think for some people, it just got put to the side and they didn't respond because they had bigger projects to bid on. We have reached out since the bid closed, and vendors have expressed an interest. And I think that we'll go back out, make sure they see our bid, follow up with phone calls like we do sometimes, and get some more responses, and hopefully it will drive the price down.
Okay, what is the will of council?
Move to accept.
A motion?
I'll second.
Second by Becky. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ariano?
Yes.
Councilmember Nisrati?
Yes.
Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. So item L, you had a question?
Yeah, so I remember when we first approved this for the 35,000 bid, I asked the question as to whether or not we had gone to the university as a potential area that they could. There's a lot of people that are working on GIS service system in the geography department that I've connected with, and now it's gone up to 91,000. I've kind of continued that conversation with some of the graduates and reviewed what we're trying to get from a services standpoint, and it sounds like this is a great opportunity for collaboration, and you know, even if we're spending $91,000 with the university, I think it's something that we should at least try and explore before we make a contract like this.
Yeah, so let me give a little background. This is an amendment to CalCAD, which is the company that performs our GIS services and provides the platform for which our data is hosted on. This item before you tonight is really more or less a stopgap measure. The data of which the city owns is we utilize CalCAD's custom developed platform that allows us to utilize our data. Without their platform, we would have to either purchase a new platform or start the process, like you're talking about, working with the university, which I think there's some value in that, and we have the current GIS committee that's going on that's evaluating the different options out there. What this amendment does tonight is CalCAD is no longer supporting the platform that we were on last fiscal year. So starting July 1st, our GIS system is not supported. They have allowed us to continue using our data on the new platform because we have this proposed amendment moving forward. But without this, we would no longer be able to utilize their platform, rendering our GIS capabilities obsolete right now until we are able to move into a new platform. So I understand that this is a stopgap measure, but the item before you tonight is more of a temporary item. And this is Director Kelly's item, and I don't know where she is in the process, if she's reached out to the university or not. I'm just really speaking on the item tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna be having conversations with some of the people at the university over the coming weeks to maybe identify if there is a path for us to work, and maybe are you familiar as to what level of urgency there is for us to be able to act on this now versus potentially a couple weeks from now?
I don't know the conversations that the city has had with CalCAD. Right now, we are utilizing the service and the platform basically without an executed contract amendment. We're not paying for the services that they're providing. I think that if I had to venture, we're utilizing our long-standing good faith and agreements that we've had with CalCAD that we're proposing this amendment for your consideration tonight, and they're allowing us to continue forward with the use of the platform right now.
And it's a 1-year term?
This is a 1-year term, yes.
Okay. I'll move to approve that.
Hang on, real quick. We open it to the public? Anyone wishing to speak? Mr. Puff? Okay, we'll close the public, and we'll get back to that motion. We have a motion.
Seconded.
And a second. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ariano,
Yes.
Councilmember Nasrati,
Yes.
Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer,
Yes.
Mayor Bublak.
Yes, passes 5-0. Final readings, we have none. We are moving to 8D. And I believe that we have a lime green instead of a green sheet. And Ms. Quintero, are you the presenter?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. Tonight before you is a request to amend the general plan and to rezone the property located at 3131 Colorado Avenue. The property is located at the corner there, and highlighted in red, of Monte Vista in Colorado. It's a 1.4 acre parcel. The current general plan designation is medium density residential, and they're requesting to amend the general plan designation to commercial office. Accompanying with the action is also a rezoning of the property. The current zoning is Plan Development 256. It is a plan development that permitted 12 townhomes to be constructed. This would rezone the property to Plan Development 277 with an underlying zoning of commercial office. This request is to allow for a 7,112 square foot dental office and a 3,727 square foot medical and or professional office. At this time, there is not an identified end user for the 3,700 square foot space, and so that use in the plan development could be medical or professional office. Again, this shows the property. It is currently designated as medium density. That's the kind of orange color there. And it is bound by the north and east by properties that are designated low density residential, so essentially single family home. And then to the west and south are properties that are designated also medium density residential. Further there to the west, down Monte Vista, is an area that has some mixed commercial zoning, but you can see the area is predominantly residential. This is the proposed site plan. The building will be oriented to Monte Vista with the parking there with one driveway accessing the site off of Colorado. These are the proposed elevations of the building. So you can see here that the top elevation, the south elevation, is what would face the parking lot. The second, the east elevation, is what would face Colorado, and the north would face Monte Vista. The west would face the adjacent property. The plan development is part of the request to further restrict the uses. So instead of any of the uses that are allowed in the commercial office zoning district, this development would be very specific to office uses only, medical and or professional offices. This is being done to kind of ensure further the compatibility with the residential area. Additionally, in the plan development, it has been conditioned in the resolution that this plan development would not expire. Typically, plan development, if permits aren't in and progress is made within a year, the plan development expires and the property reverts back to the underlying zoning. In this case, to ensure that it is this project that is constructed, the plan development will not it will not expire, and if there is any amendments to it or changes, it would have to come back through a public hearing process to amend the plan development. At your dais, there is a green sheet with 3 additional conditions that have been added to the resolution. One of those conditions is a limit to the hours of operation. So it has been added that the office uses there will not operate outside of these hours. They're not mandated to have to be open all of these hours, but they cannot be open prior to 7 a.m. Monday through Friday or past 8 p.m. On Saturday, they're limited to 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. and will be closed on Sundays. When looking at a general plan amendment, there are findings that need to be made. One is that the proposed amendment conforms to the provisions of the general plan, that the proposed amendment is consistent with the balance of the general plan, that the amendment is necessary to implement the goals of the general plan, that the public convenience, necessity, general welfare required the proposed amendment, and that the amendment will not cause substantial environmental damage. Again, there's two actions with this, so there's also a rezone, where the rezone findings are that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the general plan, that the site is suitable for the type of development and the intensity of the proposed use, that the rezoning will not cause substantial environmental damage, that there's public necessity and convenience requiring the amendment, that the building and site design are consistent with the general plan and all other policies applicable, and that the changes in the designation are compensated by a higher building or site development standard on the site, and that the changes will not adversely affect adjoining properties. It's not uncommon when we look at general plan amendments to find policies that really speak to both sides of the proposed amendment. And so often general plan amendments do require a balancing of the general plan policies when we're looking at making the decision. So some of the policies I've highlighted for you, the general plan calls that we facilitate development of neighborhoods and commercial areas to conveniently serve our current and future residents and provide employment opportunities, as well as contribute to the attractiveness of the community and the city's tax base. We're also, called to retain, improve, and promote existing businesses in Turlock and foster local startup businesses. In addition, the general plan calls to encourage local serving offices to locate in and near downtown and in close proximity to the office clusters such as Emmanuel Hospital area, to continue creating a concentrated medical office area around Emmanuel Medical, and to link the two prominent office clusters of Emmanuel Medical in downtown by extending the office designation along Colorado Avenue to East Main. To preserve the existing scale and character of existing neighborhoods while allowing infill development. And then the municipal code describes the commercial office zoning district as an area to provide transition between commercial and residential areas. In addition, when we look at, rezoning residential property, and we have to make housing element findings. We have our regional housing needs allocation numbers, are often referred to as our RENA numbers. And so whenever we are rezoning property that is zoned for residential use, we have to look at how the property was allocated in our housing element, and then we have to look at our total inventory for that type of housing that we say that we are going to provide by that property. So the property for the project was identified in the housing element as that it would provide 16 moderate income housing units. Currently, within our housing element, we we are assigned the numbers from the state, what our allocation is for the different classifications of housing. So our number for moderate income housing units is 627. We track annually our progress towards construction, and so we have constructed 600 of those 627 required units in our housing element. So we do have an excess capacity of 1,194 moderate income housing units when we look at the vacant land available that's identified. So this change in the zoning for this property
will not cause an issue with our regional housing allocation. This item was heard by the Planning Commission, and there were various public comments received. At your dais, there is a letter from a resident who could not be at the meeting tonight, but he wanted to make sure that his comments were on record and were given to council. So the various concerns that we have heard is concerns about traffic, concerns that the general plan has really identified the clusters of office space to be near the hospital. There's a concern that with this proposed amendment and changing the property to an office, that it will lead to additional future rezoning of the area and changing the nature of the area from residential to commercial. And there are concerns about the lighting of the building, the elevations of the building, the landscaping. And then we did have a resident that spoke in favor of the office development, that favored having an office project as a neighbor instead of the medium density housing that the property is designated for currently. So to kind of talk through these concerns that were heard, for the traffic, when we look at the difference in the uses of the permitted use of residential to changing to a commercial office, it will increase the daily weekday trips. The city engineer has looked at the increase in trips and has determined it is not a significant increase. It is an increase that can be accommodated by the infrastructure that is in place, the traffic signal and the roadways that are currently there. On Saturday and Sundays, there will actually be a decrease in the number of daily trips in comparison to the residential zoning that the property has. For on-space parking, they would be required to provide 55 parking spaces per our municipal code. They're providing 72 approximately, so there is adequate on-site parking to make sure there's not a parking impact to the residences. And speaking about the clusters of office, what this shows with the general plan, the large pink area is the area around Emmanuel Medical. And so really what the general plan has identified is more of the area south of Emmanuel Medical versus being north of Emmanuel Medical where this project is. For the elevations of the building, the elevations do comply with all of our commercial design guidelines. The building itself at the highest point is approximately 22 feet tall within a residential area. The maximum building height is 35 feet. And another condition that was added to the resolution on the green sheet is that a condition has been added that the site lighting will be off at 10 p.m. to ensure there's not light pollution that affects the neighbors within the area. Additionally, the initial study that was prepared also put in requirements and measures for shielding of lighting and making sure that the glare does not leave the property. Additionally, the plan development it will not be allowed to have wall signs on Colorado on the building, and the sign that would be on the southern elevation that faces the parking lot would not be allowed to be illuminated because of the residential property to the south. For the landscaping, this was a large concern of the neighbors across the street and wanting to have, a more residential feel. So the applicant has been working with the resident to kind of achieve their goals, and so the municipal code would require the landscape bed along Colorado to be a minimum of 15 feet. The applicant has agreed to increase that to 20 feet along Colorado, and that is reflected in the conditions for the plan development, as well as reducing the minimum spacing of the trees along Colorado Avenue. So our typical spacing is the trees are 30 feet apart. They have modified that theirs will be a minimum of 20 feet apart, so to get some denser planting and more trees along Colorado. These are conceptual landscape plans that the applicant had prepared. At their May 9th Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission did unanimously recommend that the City Council adopt the mitigated negative declaration and approve the project. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Unfortunately, we just changed our plan on how we do this, so just sit tight for a second. We're going to open to the public first.
Okay.
And then our questions come. So I do have Dr. Givender here.
Could you advance the slide before I begin?
So, Dr. Givender, what we do is now we just have you ask your questions, and they'll write it down, and they'll answer it after everybody's done.
I'd like to use a visual aid.
Sure, okay.
Would you advance the slide to the General Plan 2.8B notation right there? Thank you very much, and be prepared to advance the slide when I'm ready to the schematic that shows the clusters.
Sure.
Thank you. I hope that doesn't count against my 3 minutes here. Okay, as you know, a general plan is a set of policies and programs that form a blueprint for physical development throughout the community. It's a long-term document consisting of written text and diagrams. It says in the general plan that Emmanuel Medical Center is a large office, land use northeast of downtown, with a hospital anchoring a collection of smaller medical offices surrounding it. That's in the general plan. 2.8B says, encourage local serving offices to locate in and near downtown in the proximity to existing professional office clusters such as Emmanuel. C says, continue creating a concentration of medical offices in the vicinity of Emmanuel Hospital, while encouraging new nodes of office development. And C says, link two prominent office clusters, Emmanuel to downtown. This project has been characterized as an infill project. It is not. It is not an infill project. It does not fill in any existing vacancy within that cluster area. Indeed, there are 4 properties without structures on them south of Tuolumne Avenue, fronting on Colorado, between Tuolumne and Main Street. There are 2 additional properties, vacant without structures, fronting on Olive Avenue, south of Tuolumne Avenue. Number 2 is not within any cluster. It is not adjacent to any cluster. It is not in proximity to any cluster. It is not in the vicinity of Emmanuel Hospital or any cluster. It does not link any offices, according to the general plan, from the Emmanuel Hospital area to downtown. So it is not an infill project. What is it then? It's a leapfrog project. And you can see that if we advance, please, to the cluster slide. And as you can see there, the project is at least 1/2 mile north of the Emmanuel Hospital cluster.
Doctor, I'm sorry, your time has expired.
Okay, I'm going to conclude by saying this is a reasonable project in the wrong location, and I recommend that the planning department work with the applicant to find a suitable location, and that the city undertake a master plan for both the Emmanuel to downtown link and a potential master plan along the Monte Vista corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Dorius?
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff. Scott Dorius, 300 North Palm, Turlock. As you can see in the general plan, there are several guidelines, and it's for you to apply those judiciously and weigh and balance many factors. And so, as we have had an excellent presentation from the planning department, I'd just like to highlight a couple of things. First of all, the history of this particular property being a multifamily, it's been in contracts several times, and due diligence has been performed on it, and no one has moved forward with because of issues there with costs and fees and impacts of the multifamily thing. So this property has not been able to develop over a number of years as residential. Second, even though there are vacant properties, as mentioned previously in this other areas, that does not mean that they're available to purchase or suitable for the particular project. And that's why this project ended up where it is. There are other projects along Monte Vista, all of you are aware of those, that are commercial related and that have worked well in the residential area. Our particular law office is in downtown at 300 North Palm and Mitchell. We have residences all around it. It's a transitional zone. We've been there for 35 years and have no problems with our neighbors. It's fit in well. We have landscaping that fits in with the neighborhood and residences. Probably the biggest problem I've seen over the years with properties in mixed areas like this is lack of parking, and this project has ample parking that's been prepared for us. We did meet with members of the community over a long period of time, over months, and tried to respond to their issues, and as reported by staff, the Planning Commission recommended unanimously that the project go forward. Finally, this is a business that has been here for many years, and I think I erred in not putting Dr. McCullough's name down, so if he can take some time after me, I'd appreciate it. This is a local business. It's going to grow, increase number of jobs in the community, and find a place for this dental practitioner that's been here for years and years to expand. He has a daughter in dental school that he's bringing on shortly, and other members. So we think it's a very appropriate project, and we think you have the discretion to weigh all the different code sections and applications of the general plan as presented by staff, and we request your support. Thank you.
Dr. McCullough?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm not comfortable here. I'm more comfortable over somebody, but.
When they can't talk back?
Yeah, that's right. I'll just pretend you're laying down. A little history of our practice. Less than a month after my wife and I were married, we moved to Turlock, and I took an associate position here in town, and my wife attended and later graduated Cal State Stanislaus. In 1986, we opened our first office at the corner of Main and Canal, 1,300 square foot with 4 treatment rooms, 1 doctor, me, no hygienist, front office person, my wife, and 1 assistant. And over the years, my 2 daughters were born here in Turlock at Emmanuel Hospital. In 1998, as we were outgrowing that original office, we purchased the building we're in at 990 Delbon. It was a medical office built in the 60s. After we remodeled, we opened in 2000, and we got up to 3,600 square feet, 8 treatment rooms. I was still the only doctor then. By then, we had grown to 3 hygienists, 2 assistants, 2 front office team members. We built the office we thought we would never outgrow at that time. In 2010, our younger daughter joined our practice as a hygienist, and then 2 years ago started dental school, and she'll be joining us in less than 2 years. And over the last few years, we've been growing at a tremendous rate. We've more than doubled our practice the last 7 years. We now have a team of 16, 2 doctors, 4 hygienists, 5 assistants, 3 front office people, a person in marketing. Our older daughter, Catherine, is our operations manager. We have a plan to add another doctor within a year. and my daughter in 2 years. Our current building just can't handle our patient flow. We don't have adequate parking. We created, in this process, we started looking over a year ago for another building, another property. We kept coming back to this location. We created a map of where our patients come from, predominantly northeast Turlock. That puts us right in the middle of this area to serve our community. We want to build a building here that will be a model of modern dentistry to effectively give the best care, patient experience possible. We wish to have a visual impact and aesthetic of the exterior to reflect the level of care we provide inside, and we certainly want to complement and enhance this area of Turlock. We're proud to be a part of this community. We support Turlock with things like a free day of dentistry every year. We sponsor events like Farmers Market. With this new facility, we'll be able to provide better care to more patients, employ more team, give back more to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
Good time.
Yeah. Anyone else who has not spoken wishing to speak regarding this? Okay, I will close the public hearing, and this is where we can ask questions and comments.
Yeah, sure. So I have some questions related to planning here. I know that we have that time restriction put into place. How do we come up with that? Is that through community input or?
It was in conjunction with speaking to the applicant as well as the neighbor that has been really involved in meeting and talking to us. So it's, one accommodates how Dr. McCullough's office plans to operate, as well as the residents' desire. That he was, very adamant that Saturday afternoon and evening that they be closed and closed all day on Sunday. So it was really a compromise between that resident and Dr. McCullough's office.
I mean, one of the things in that I wonder, I know that some in our community want more walkable neighborhoods, and to be able to achieve some of the things like that, we want to be able to identify potential areas where mixed-use commercial can be situated within our existing general plan. And right now, we're putting on a restriction for office only, and I think it's, in this particular case, it seems like it's in line with their particular needs, but I think I want to speak to maybe the concern of the resident of how this ties into a larger plan, and I think we've got a couple items on the agenda here that are along the Monte Vista corridor that are seeing housing mixed or medium density and high density that are being rezoned to commercial. And I know that we are meeting our RENA numbers with this in particular for what is being required. I don't know if it's necessarily meeting what is needed. I've talked to a lot of developers in this process of trying to figure out how we can encourage housing development, and they constantly come up to me and say things just don't pencil out. We talk about this particular property having had a couple people come in and they just can't make the numbers work. And I know that if we go project by project, identifying residential units to be rezoned without modifying our general plan and modifying some of the practices that are contributing to a cost structure that doesn't work for developers, we're just gonna we're gonna have to abandon the general plan entirely. So both of these projects, I think, individually and like with understanding all the surrounding variables that contribute to it, are things that I'm very supportive of, but I would like to work with our staff and I think that there is an opportunity for us to revisit some of our plans, some of the things within our general plan as it relates to medium density, high density, and commercial usage to promote that kind of development. And I know that the state is really, really trying to encourage local municipalities to review their zoning, and they have funding available to it to review the zoning to try and encourage the kinds of development that we need in here. Right now I'm in a position where I think that this particular case checks the boxes for me, but only if we as a council and as a staff commit to identifying why is it that we have so many prime real estate, high density, mixed density lots that are just not getting developed. Why is it that starting cost for to put a shovel into dirt is $65,000 for our city when it's not at that level in surrounding communities? That's my call.
And I just have a couple of questions. I've actually explored this opportunity with in that particular parcel when Ronnie Gavargas owned it, and it didn't pencil. So it's been a problem. It was an acre and a half that developers have just kind of shied away from because it hasn't had the potential to make any sort of profit on. So commercial is always a good. Commercial's usually a good neighbor. You didn't say anything about security measures, and I don't know if the doctor could speak to that, but that would be part of my concern. Making sure that they had adequate security, since we don't have our number of police and fire, up to levels of what we would like to have. Maybe for the first year or so, that they would have some sort of security measures for the residents around that area. I drive that area every day to take my kids to school. So it does get busy, and, Monte Vista is super busy. So that would be one thing. The adequate parking is huge. There's not enough parking on Colorado, and it gets real tight with the cars that are parked on the side of the roads from the residential areas. And I'd like to actually see that, what's that thing called that has the thing that you put and it tells you how fast you're going? What's that called? The radar sign out there to mitigate some of the speeding, because it is a thoroughway. There's no stop sign between Monte Vista and Tuolumne. So people get going super fast down there. So I've almost been hit numerous times, actually. So I would like to see that. I'm glad you said that there was adequate parking. I think that's important. The dawn to dusk lights, we always have a problem with commercial, and we really need to be vigilant in making sure that those lights are on enough for security, but not facing into residents' homes. So that would be another one of my concerns. Was there a traffic study done on that particular?
There was not a traffic study done specifically for this project, and looking at the increase in traffic was determined by the city engineer that it was not a significant enough of a change from what was studied with the overall general plan traffic analysis that it warranted that specific traffic study be required.
And I think I would like to also add, landscaping and maintenance are going to be a huge part of that corner, because it's so highly visible from Monte Vista and from Colorado. So I would just, I'm sure that, I know that you maintain your offices, and I would just like that to continue, so.
Other questions, comments? The lime green sheet, this was after Planning Commission or part of Planning Commission?
That was, the 3 conditions were added after the Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, what is the will of council?
So can we take this as an opportunity to direct staff to revisit the general plan zoning as it relates to high density, medium density?
So, I'd wait till the end of the meeting when you have your council area, but, you can say that you'd like us to look in it, and then we'll see if you have the concurrent agreement.
I can't have like a contingency if yes if we.
You can always ask, no, you can't tie it. You can't tie your vote to something, so you have to, you have to have the motion has to stand independent.
Head nods to know how you're feeling.
I move to adopt the resolution.
We have a motion on the first resolution,
I'll second.
and we have a second. Clerk, call the roll, please.
And Mayor, as just a point of clarification, I had an opportunity to talk with the city attorney. If it is the will of the council member or the majority of the council, you are able to take all of the three actions
Oh.
together rather than taking the one that I had first advised.
You-
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Point of
Is that your
clarification,
motion
thank you.
for all three?
That is my motion.
That's what I thought, and that was your second? Okay.
Just to clarify, your motion also includes with the green sheets, or the lime sheets, I should say.
Right, we gotta get the right green.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Esquer, second by Councilmember Ariano for all three actions to also include the green sheet. Councilmember Ariano?
Yes.
Councilmember Nisrati?
Yes.
Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. Thank you for your efforts. Which was the other that you were asking to go forward with? E? Okay. Item E. Warrior Crossing Project. Who's up? Pardon me? No. Now I do. Warrior Crossing, Arkansas City. Ergonomic. Couple dollars.
She's going to donate it.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and members of the public and staff. Tonight before you is a project, another general plan amendment, rezone and plan development. Many of the things that I'm about to say you will have already heard from Katie's presentation also. But my project is a little bit further down on Monte Vista. It's at the corner of Monte Vista and Kroll. It is a 1.42 acre property that is currently zoned for high-density residential. The owners or the developers would like to, they have requested a general plan amendment and a rezone action to change that high-density residential to community commercial. That's to allow for a small commercial center to be constructed. The property was annexed in 1996, and until recently, there was a 2,900 square foot single-family home, several outbuildings, accessory buildings, and a pool. Earlier this year, those buildings and those structures were removed in anticipation of the future development. So this is just some information about the removal of the property. The proposed amendment is to, as I said, is to take the general plan that is currently for high-density residential and change the general plan to community commercial. The developer's Turlock Retail is proposing about approximately 7,600 square feet of retail space on that corner, and it is basically broken up into a multi-tenant building, approximately 6,700 square feet, and a small kiosk drive-through that's about 860, 870 square feet. As previously said, there are several general plan policies, and Councilmember Nasrati had pointed out that we do like to have a walkable, or we are promoting a walkable community. These are several general plan policies that kind of promote that. One of them is locating neighborhood and community commercial areas. This center would provide that small commercial center in a neighborhood that would allow residents in the neighborhood to walk to get those services. And those type of services would be things like cafes or salons, going to the, dropping off your dry cleaning, something like that, or just a small retail store. As Katie pointed out earlier, the general plan does there are times when general plan amendments kind of, they don't necessarily go hand in hand all the time. When we are changing from, or they kind of conflict with each other. The multi-tenant building will have neighborhood services in it. They will have those type of uses that will encourage people to walk. And it's easily accessed from Kroll Road and Monte Vista Avenue. However, the drive-through building for the small kiosk, it doesn't promote walkability, and it focuses more on the customers in their cars. There is, however, a small area out where the red arrows are, where if you come and walk up and purchase a beverage, you can sit outside, but it doesn't encourage you to sit and linger inside or really promote staying in the area and walking to the area. It is really more focused to the people in their cars coming in and driving through. So that's just kind of an example of when staff does receive a general plan amendment or possibly a rezone, that sometimes the general plan policies kind of conflict with each other. Again, staff also had to analyze the housing element, as Katie pointed out, arena numbers. As we were going through, this 1.42 acre property is identified to be able to develop with 30 residential units. Taking those 30 residential units out of the inventory, again, we would have to make sure that we have enough sites identified that could still handle the capacity that the state has handed down to us. Taking those 30 residential the units out of the inventory still leaves us with about 869 in surplus for that income level. For the high-density residential zoning district, it's identified more for the very low and low-income households that more affordable for that are not necessarily market rate in rent or sale. So we still have a surplus that we could still meet that, but it is something that we do continue to look at, as you said, if we're going to be removing units out of our inventory. We also analyze the traffic. We didn't do a traffic study. One was not necessarily required. But again, we do have to analyze what would be the trips that the 30 residential units would be generating versus what a commercial center would be generating. And based on that, there would be an overall increase of 118 average vehicle trips per day. And again, we like to take Nathan's name in vain and say that the city engineer did look at that and did conclude that the existing roadway can handle that small increase in traffic. So this is, again, the site plan for the Warrior Crossing. The main entrance was proposed to be off of Kroll with an additional entrance off of Monte Vista. The Monte Vista entrance was proposed to be only right in and right out. During the May Planning Commission meeting, we received several comments from residents in the area, as well as discussion with the planning commissioners, amongst the planning commissioners, of potentially adding more vehicles and more pedestrians at an already busy intersection of Monte Vista and Kroll. So through some discussion with the commissioners and with staff and with the applicant, it was proposed to limit the access from Kroll as a right-in, right-out also. So you would no longer be able to exit out Kroll Road and head north. So there was a resolution, or there was a condition added to the resolution during Planning Commission that is included in the staff report, to have a physical barrier limit that turning movement. And engineering staff has been working with the applicant to identify what that specifically is. And the city engineer did say that there will be a small median or curbing that will be put into Kroll Road heading up just, I guess, a little bit north of the intersection through the drive-through or through the driveway so that they won't be able to make that left turn heading north turning movement. There was also the addition of the pedestrian little walking signs that tell you when you can walk. There will be one on the northwest corner, the northeast corner, as well as the southwest corner. So those were other additions that were added for safety purposes that the Planning Commission as well as the residents wanted. So staff also was working with the architect to with the architecture of the buildings. One of our real concerns was the back of the building. The multi-tenant building backs onto Monte Vista, and as such a prominent corner as well as a gateway through our city, we were really concerned with making sure that the back of the building doesn't look like the back of the building. So they have added some windows. There are windows and trellises that kind of mimic the facade on the front, so that we won't see a long blank long blank wall with just with the service doors, things like that. They've also included some awnings and some different articulation in the roof line there also. The colors, as well as some of the materials, are also on the small kiosk building, so that visually when you see the two, they look like they play together and that they're not just individual separate projects. As a plan development, again, we've also restricted the type of uses that are going to be permitted in that zoning district, mainly because it's a small property. There are some uses that would not be appropriate for that location, as well mainly because it is kind of surrounded by some residential uses, and it is a small use. So a lot of your automobile type uses would not be permitted. There are some conditionally permitted uses like daycares or emergency shelter or religious assembly. Those are uses that we would want to have a little more control over, because the parking or would not necessarily be available for a higher intense use. Any other, you see down at the bottom where it says major PD amendment, that would, if one of those units came in, if something wanted to come in like that, then it would require that the plan development be amended, and it would come back to a public hearing between the Planning Commission and the City Council. There is also a time limit on the plan development, that it won't expire. That was done in order to ensure that the city and the community have the control of the highest ability to ensure that this project is built. As Katie explained earlier, within a year, if the project isn't started, then the plan development would expire, and it would go back to the original zoning. If we didn't put if we didn't put some kind of controls over it, once it was rezoned to commercial, a project that would not necessarily be compatible with the surrounding area, like an automobile use, could come in at a staff level and be approved that way. So this way, and limiting the number of uses or the types of uses, as well as not allowing the plan development to expire, gives us the most control over the types of uses and design of any future projects. So as Katie explained, our findings for approval for this general plan amendment are pretty much the same as the previous one. They are both general plan amendments, as well as reasons. So the same motions and discussion would be happening that you had prior to Katie's presentation. And those are the motions. So if Any
We're gonna open it to
questions?
the
I'll wait.
public, yeah. So the applicant, John, if you're willing to come up and speak?
Mayor Bublak and members of the council, my name is John Glickbarg. I'm with Turlock Retail LP, 940 Emmett Avenue, Belmont, California. Thanks for moving us up on the agenda. I appreciate it. My partner Ronnie Gavargas grew up in Turlock and likes to tell me he went to Turlock High School and he knows everybody, and I think could be the president of the Chamber of Commerce here. But when he first brought me this property, he had a very simple plan for it, and basically it's a very good corner with 20,000 people and a 1 mile ring, not to mention 10,000 students. That's going to turn into 16,000 students. There's sort of a smattering of daily use needs between, Gear Road and Golden State Boulevard, and you got all these people that if they want to have a cup of coffee or get a sandwich or dry cleaning, or get their hair done. I don't think about that much, but they don't want to go to a major thoroughfare to do that kind of thing. And so this, I think, is filling a need for that neighborhood. And just without even having put a stick in the ground yet, we've already got signed deals with a coffee shop and 2 restaurants. So I think Ronnie was right about it. We worked very closely with staff on this, and just to give them quick kudos, Marin was great to sort of help us navigate, and Nathan got involved early because you can hear Public Works can really mess up a deal, as you hear from your roadways. So we were able to vet that. And then Adrian is nothing if not tenacious, I'll say. And we didn't always see eye to eye with Adrian, but we worked very closely with her. She was really accessible, very responsive, and had a major hand in what you see, which I think is a really, really cool looking project. Our whole team is here to answer questions if anybody has any. We've reviewed the staff report. We're able to comply with all 131 conditions, including the 2 that were added by the Planning Commission. We can also comply with the use restrictions that are applied to the plan development, which I thought it's funny, fortune telling is one of the things that's allowed, so we're going to look for a fortune teller now. So again, we'll be available for questions, but I did want to introduce, and he's filled out a speaker card, my architect, Jeff Acuff. Jeff and I have been together over 20 years. We've done probably 100 projects together all across the country, and he's a great guy. And he's going to give you a quick skinny on the project.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You get your own 3, don't worry. Scare 'em.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I just want to do a quick description of the project, if I could. The project's on a small parcel. It's 1.4 acres on one of Turlock's main arterials and across from Cal State Stanislaus, right across the corner from it. And it's the intent is to design it to the vibrancy that will reflect the location there. The site is arranged to provide areas for parking with efficient circulation, outdoor seating, and rich landscaping, especially along the frontages of the property. I'm working with the electrical engineer right now to ensure that we have adequate lighting without having any light trespass onto adjacent properties. The buildings are the Dutch Brothers Coffee Kiosk at the corner and the multi-tenant commercial building to the west, intended to be leased out to a combination of restaurants and retails, maybe office tenants who will serve the needs of this community. The 2 buildings are tied together with materials, colors, textures, and the site design. The smaller Dutch Brothers building is a composition of 3 masses, each of which is expressed with different colors and materials, the whole thing tied together with one broad canopy overhang that provides shade to walk-up customers and to seating, and extends 17 out from the face of the building. The larger multi-tenant building is broken down into smaller masses expressed as alternating pieces with the forward forms utilizing thin brick veneer, which matches the thin brick veneer on the Dutch Brothers building, and the receding pieces using blue box rib metal, also shared material with the adjacent building. And we'll be using a variety of architectural elements such as freestanding steel canopies, green screens, projecting soffits, brightly colored downspouts and storefront windows to enliven the exterior and provide scale and rhythm, and articulated design that works at various distances, both for the people that are up close to the building and the people driving by as well. And if I could, as I leave, the image that was used to illustrate it, just for whatever reasons, does a terrible job of representing the colors. So I have a printout that I use for myself, and can I pass it around? I think it does a better job. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to speak regarding this? If not, we'll close it and bring it back to council. Questions, comments?
What were the parking structure, or parking, spaces that were allotted? I didn't see that on there.
Oh, let me see if I can. Where?
Where and how many?
Oh, I'm sorry. The parking spaces are to the west and north of the multi-tenant building. So they go throughout the entire center. So they're not necessarily allocated. These are just for the kiosk, and these are just for the multi-building. So everybody can move within each one. But I believe I'm not sure, Jeff. I believe there are about 50 parking spaces.
In the middle, there were 72 with the takeaway for the acceleration. I think it was using a couple of parking spaces, but also using a little bit of square footage on the building.
Right, so
69 or 70 parking spaces.
So it's more than what our municipal code would require. So they are meeting their parking requirements.
Any other questions? Yes, here we go. Councilmember Larson.
Thank you for the presentation, and same to Katie too, that both of these presentations were so thorough, yes, informative, and it's so easy to visualize and see exactly where these things fit in with our general plan. So many kudos. It helps a lot for people that are new, because this is fantastic. But I had a couple questions. Could you go to the slide where I think it's like things that are prohibited in that area? There was like a list of both of different things. I just wanted to know why on the prohibited uses that a bar is one, because I'm assuming that these restaurants are probably going to serve alcohol. But is the bar not allowed because of its close proximity to a school? Is it?
Well, a bar, just to give you a little bit, a restaurant that serves alcohol is, we look at different than it would be a bar.
I understand.
The bar would, staff, we determined that it would not be appropriate in that location. It would exceed the amount of parking that is provided, so we would have to do another parking, as well as where it's located. There are, the property to the west is zoned for residential. The property to the north is zoned residential, as well as properties to the south. There's an adult community to the south, so it wasn't an appropriate location for that type of use.
Okay, perfect. And then another, I didn't see cannabis on the prohibited uses on that side, and I didn't know if that's something that
These are uses that are currently in our community commercial zoning district, so that's what we're rezoning it to for the underlying, and cannabis hasn't come forward
Look for
yet.
cannabis on the 23rd.
Things
At a
coming
meeting
soon.
coming to you soon.
Well, other than those questions, I think this is a fantastic project. I would have loved to have had something like this when I was going to Stan State. Right, right. I'll get a degree just so I can utilize this as a student. But this is such a great idea. So happy to see something like this right across the street from students. I noticed it in one of the drawings, the diagrams. I know that for the planning commissioners, they talked about having the crosswalks.
Right.
And I'm wondering if, I know that there is a crosswalk without any lighting on Kroll, but it's more north, and I think it's like right out of one of the entrances to the campus. Would it be redundant to put another one where that essentially where that red arrow is? Is that deemed unnecessary based on the accessibility in the other areas?
You mean a
crosswalk?
A crosswalk?
Yeah, just the
I'll
pedestrian
defer
one.
to the city engineer on that.
I know, that's why I figured, I just wanted to know why.
Make those pedestrian.
I think I can answer that question. So that location right there, you would have a uncontrolled crossing or a mid-block crossing. We try to prohibit those as much as possible. The area to the north, I think it's Winter Haven, Winter Green.
Yes.
There is that rectangular rapid flashing beacon
Yes.
that is used quite frequently. The improvements there at the intersection will add what's known as countdown ped heads. So you'll see, after your ability to initiate your walking movement, it'll count down how many seconds you have left. So that was one of the concerns that the Planning Commission brought forth, to make sure that with the increased traffic, the increased pedestrian traffic, drivers and pedestrians are more aware of the increased presence there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
You.
Oh,
Yeah. Respect my elders.
Oh, come here. Come this way. Just a quick couple of comments. When I first saw this project, I was a little concerned with the traffic that was going to be generated, so I'm glad that we saw that Nathan and his group got together and talked about that divider in there. So that will eliminate some of the problems that I foresaw in that area, because it is a busy intersection. It is a busy thoroughfare there. So I'm glad that you guys put that in there.
Okay, so there is a divider right on Kroll.
There isn't now, but it will.
It's going to be added. Kind of because I imagine this similar to how we have the Starbucks on Gear, where traffic gets
Hedstrom.
back. Yeah,
Can't
yeah.
go that way.
And I don't know if it's appropriate for this particular project, but I foresee a situation where Kroll is going to get backed up from traffic on that intersection.
Slow it down.
Is it? Do we think we're going to be needing to add some lights down Kroll, maybe coming out of this? Is that a city-controlled street that's at the end of? Is it Ansel Adams Boulevard and is it Bittern Way or some of these streets down the way to slow things down?
Yeah, so with the traffic signal being so close, similar to the other location where you're developing on an intersection on a corner that's adjacent to a traffic signal, we have the ability to adjust the cycle time, so the timing of the signal that allows the different movements to occur. We have the ability to adjust that if we see that there are issues arising. The median that will be installed will be a concrete median. It'll be a narrow median without any landscaping or electrical work. And it'll all be on the east side of the center line, so it still provides the right-hand turn as well as the through and left-hand turn that's currently there right now. That was a concern that I had when we started exploring putting a median in there, is restricting one of those turn movements, and you're going to increase that back up a lot more. Just recently, we further extended some of the red curb there along the southbound or the west side of Kroll, just north of this location. We found that there were a couple cars parking closer to the intersection that didn't allow cars to get over in that right-hand turn pocket and make that movement. So we have the ability to regulate the road that way. If you,
traffic coming out of the University Park
if the
between intersections.
Yeah, that's, during peak times, there already can be some issues there with some backup and stacking, as I'm sure Councilmember Larson, you're aware of. We are currently working on some improvements to the intersection of Ansel Adams and Kroll to the north, along with the bicycle striping along Christofferson. We're redoing the striping up to that intersection. We're putting a three-way stop in right there. So that should help regulate the speed of vehicles, say if they're entering or exiting from Ansel Adams onto Kroll to head southbound. It should help provide some additional buffering and some queuing. But as it stands right now, even if a residential property were to go in here, we're still dealing with a smaller road with peak times with the vehicles entering out from the college.
And the other thought I had, I expect that there's going to be a lot of bike traffic to a location like this. Is there bike parking within the development?
They are required to have a specific number of bicycle racks available. It's usually, I believe, 10% of what the amount of parking that they have. So that's one of their conditions also, but that's also something that we check for.
Okay, we can take all three together if anyone is interested in making a motion one way or another.
Motion to approve.
We have your motion. And we have a second. Clerk, call the roll on all three resolutions and, two resolutions and ordinance, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Ariano?
Yes.
Councilmember Nisrati?
Yes.
Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. Thank you. We are going to item in 9A. Ms. Trainee, are you ready? Request to authorize the city manager or his or her designee to make the necessary California Environmental Quality Act determinations and approve the temporary closure of public streets, blah, blah.
You got it. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. The item before you this evening is seeking approval of the delegation of street closure approval as well as the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, as it specifically pertains to the special event application process. On May 10th, 2016, City Council adopted the special event application process to be managed through the Parks, Recreation, and Public Facilities Department. Since then, the city has experienced an increase in special events which are accompanied by street closures. These street closure requests are primarily requested for event purposes and pedestrian safety. As you know, currently the special event process is each event is subject to public notification, a public hearing is held, and then that comes before this body for approval. Included in that process is the California Environmental Quality Act determination that must be made each time the city plans to temporarily modify the use of land along any portion of public right-of-way. This specifically pertains to the special event application process. This determination must be made when any modification will result in a temporary closure of a specified street closure. These modifications will not create any long-term or permanent modifications to that public right-of-way. Based on council feedback over the last 3 years, staff is recommending a more expedited process whereby council delegates the authority of that street closure approval as well as the CEQA determination to the city manager or his designee. With the delegation of this process, the process will still include application submission and all applicable fees, a minimum of 2-week public notification prior to a public hearing. The application will still be reviewed and routed through our special events committee, which consists of representatives from the police department, public facilities maintenance, fire, and engineering, as well as all applicants will still need to comply with the provision of general liability insurance as accepted by the city and adherence to any temporary traffic control plans as approved by our city manager. Along with the feedback received by council, we've received feedback from our applicants that they would like to see a more streamlined process. Getting on a council agenda, as you know, can be a timely thing, and sometimes our applicants, as much as we would like them to be more on top of it, come to us and need time to advertise their event. This would give us a more streamlined way to do that. So we would not only be not having to come before you each week, but also more able to accommodate our applicants on a timely manner. If any special circumstances do arise with any new events or changes in reoccurring events come, this does not mean that we cannot come before you for further direction or to be more forward about those things. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, we'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to ask a question or make a Milt?
I do have one question that regards public input on whether or not, we've had some discussions where we had events and people of the public didn't want all of these streets, especially with the Knights of Columbus marching from, or the Portuguese celebration. So would the public have a way of inputting into this process? I mean, how are they going to do that? Could you explain that, please?
Hang on, Amber, just real quick. Is there anyone else who wants to ask any questions? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. If you then would answer, please. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So all of our special events, street closure, if a street closure has been requested or not, do go through a public notification process. So if it is a continuing, a moving procession, say, we do everybody that's impacted along those routes. If it's a stationary event, a street fair that's going to require just a section of roadway be impacted, we do a 500-foot radius. We do a minimum of 2-week notification. Everybody within that radius gets a public notification of the event or the proposed event date, time, location, and how that will impact their area, and then a public hearing will be held. It won't be held here. We'll have it, city staff will conduct that public hearing in a different area. If at that point special circumstances do arise and we feel that it needs to be brought before council because of the public impact or the public input that we received, we can still do that.
Questions or comments? Yes.
Quick question, Amber, now, have you found that the 10-day or 2-week notice, is that sufficient for the people that are?
We have heard that 2-week notice is kind of enough notice, but not too much that we send it out. We've also heard when we send it out too early, oh, I forgot about that, or, oh, I meant to send an email. With our public notification is always my email as well as my phone number. If they aren't able to make it to the actual public hearing, they're always invited to send in any comments.
What is the will? Is the resolution?
It's all yours, Bob. Move to request the.
He's got a pen.
Bob moves to accept.
Okay, we have a motion or a second?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Pardon me? Borrow the pen? Yes, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ariano?
Thank you.
Yes. Councilmember Nusrati?
Yes.
Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Iscar?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Finally, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very
for
much,
that,
council.
yes. Passes 5-0. Okay, public hearings, item A, request to order the improvements and formation of the Fairbanks Ranch subdivision, landscaping and lighting benefit assessment district at the street maintenance benefit assessment area. Mr. Bray.
Once again, good evening.
Pretty much.
This is a public hearing, and I don't have nice presentations like Katie and Adrian did, so I do apologize, but I hope to be shorter. The item before you tonight is the third and final request to form an assessment district. This assessment district is located along Tuolumne Road, near the intersection of Tuolumne and Daubenberger. If you're familiar with the area, this is the work that is being currently undertaken right now and is collectively known as Fairbanks Ranch. This subdivision, as a condition of improvement, they are required to enter into a landscape lighting and benefit assessment district. This is to ensure that the private development pays for their impacts to existing city services, and if they create new facilities, that they're paying to maintain those facilities as well. The site is just over 40 acres, and upon development will be roughly 129 units. The first meeting for the assessment district was held on November 14th, 2017. The second meeting was held May 14th in 2019, and so this is the third and final meeting of which I believe Jen, the city clerk, will go over the ballots that were received, either in favor or in opposition. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, open to the public. Anyone wishing to, Mr. Puffer? 3 minutes starts as soon as you stand up.
Earlier this evening, I believe the city manager said we had in excess of 200 of these special assessment districts.
201 now.
And he also talked about how you stop spending money is you don't spend it. The way to stop the increase in these special assessment districts is to finally say no more. I would think that you'd need to take this existing one here and see if there's another assessment district next door and just have it tie into that one. You want to come, you said it later this year, you want to go in there and see a way to start reducing them. Well, one of the ways to start reducing them is not add any more at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, we will close the public hearing, and any questions or comments regarding that? Okay, yes.
Yeah, just quickly. Yeah, I know, the city manager did talk about this earlier, and he did mention that we're working on a way to manage them better. So my question is kind of following up on what Mr. Puffer just asked. Is there a way to consolidate some of these as if they are neighbored by a previous one?
Counselor?
Well,
City manager?
I mean, I think I can answer that
Oh,
question.
okay.
There is a way, yes.
By vote.
If there were a neighboring assessment district that had the same facilities that this assessment district could then become a part of, we would go through the 218 ballot process of which we're doing right now. And if we received more yes than no votes, that's essentially how they would be annexed into the existing assessment district. There's currently not an existing assessment district next door that is adequate. This subdivision, as well as the next item, the subdivision, are somewhat unique in where part of the assessment district is a large storm drain basin that includes a French drain system. So these costs for these assessment districts are going to be quite higher than surrounding assessment districts, or really higher than any other in the city. The cost to replace that storm drain system when it fails, and I believe the life cycle is 30 years, is rolled up into those costs, and so that's what makes it so expensive.
Any other questions? Yes.
Could we theoretically loop it in with another assessment if it's not neighboring, but if they have the same services?
That's my understanding, yes. You could identify a community assessment district or an area assessment district and annex those different assessment districts or properties into that, similar to the same way we annex into CFD number 2. My understanding is it would be the same process, and City Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong.
So, the reason that you don't do it on the assessment districts is the people who are currently residing there. So you go in with a developer, you have one person who's effectively voting, which is how it is in most of these cases. To annex these into other ones, the existing homeowners, which could be hundreds, would have to actually have a vote in, to let them annex it in, and very rarely are they successful, even if it doesn't have hardly any impact, because you have to do an education campaign that this is not going to cost them money, which is why you wind up with. It's kind of why you wind up with 300. We do have a strategy that I think we're going to hope to unveil in September that will address the volume of CFDs that we have, and a plan for kind of how to to deal with them. But realistically speaking, tonight, these were set up under, under different development standards, and we kind of have to take one step forward and then take one step back to take the 2 steps forward. So it would be our recommendation that you approve these items tonight, this and the other ones, with the idea that we are going to be looking at other vehicles in the future to kind of replace them.
So if there's it was 2017, so if there's any trenching, they're gonna get away with spotty work, huh?
They do have vesting rights back to 2005, I want to say, so, yes.
Okay, any last questions? Okay, then I would ask the clerk to confirm receipt of ballots.
Thank you, Mayor. The only ballot received for this item is in favor of the district. No ballots were received in opposition of, therefore no majority protest exists, and the council may form the district.
Thank you. Who would like to introduce the resolution?
Move to introduce.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ariano?
Yes.
Councilmember Nisrati?
Yes.
Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, 5-0.
What's that, I'm sorry?
All right, Mr. Bray.
Yeah, this will be a little bit shorter than the last one. The item before you tonight is the third and final meeting for the assessment district of the adjacent parcel to the previous public hearing item. This parcel is located at the corner of Waring and Tuolumne. This parcel is not currently undergoing construction, but part of the conditions for approval of their subdivision is to enter into an assessment district. Similar to the last one, this is an assessment district that has items that are unique to that area as opposed to the adjacent one. It does have the basin, but it has a larger block wall that they'll be required to maintain through the assessment district, and so the rates aren't the same also. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, open it to the public. Anyone asking any questions? Yes, Mr. Treewaller.
Yes, council staff. The one question I have is, when they're not in the process of doing the construction work and they're forming an assessment district, when do they have to pay the fees for this assessment district? We're not going to defer these for 15 years or so, are we? I mean, my question is, when do they begin paying the fees for their assessment district?
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? We'll close the public hearing. Mr. Brady, do you have an answer?
I do have an answer, yes. So the payment of the assessment district fees would be identified in a subdivision improvement agreement. Since this unique subdivision is not at that stage of development yet, it would be identified in a future agreement that would come before council. The payment would be required prior to the city's acceptance of the work. So that way the city still has quote-unquote teeth to enforce that work is done. If we were to collect it now or prior to the city accepting the improvements, there's a time frame of which the city has collected money for maintenance of a facility that's not built yet. And so that's why we collect it prior to accepting it, when the contractor and the developer still has the control and of the maintenance of the facilities, but prior to us
So if
taking
there's
over control.
issues with weeds or whatever, we're not doing anything to abate that. If they're taking care of it.
That is
If they
correct.
don't, we would lien them?
We would notify them. If they still do not perform, we have a security on file of which we would do the work and then collect the money from their security, which they do not want.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, clerk, do you confirm the receipt of ballot?
Thank you, Mayor. For this formation, there was only one ballot received, and the ballot received is in favor of the district. Therefore, no ballots were received in opposition of. Therefore, no majority protest exists, and the council may form the district.
Is that an introduction? We have an introduction to the resolution and a second by Councilmember Larson. Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Ariano?
Yes.
Councilmember Nisrati?
Yes.
Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 5-0. One more, Mr. Bray.
Last and final for tonight. This item is the third and final meeting for the formation of an assessment district. This is for the formation of assessment district with the development project known as Superstores. So this is the commercial expansion of an existing facility located at Spangler and Kilroy. This is there's 26.14 acres of new construction for the Superstore plant. This plant will heck, they've already had a hiring fair of where they hired 140 individuals. So again, this was a condition of their development. The first meeting was heard on April 23rd of 2019, and the second meeting was heard on May 14th of 2019. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Open it to the public. Anyone wishing to ask any questions? Comments? Close the public hearing, bring it back. Are there any questions? If not, then I'll ask the clerk to confirm receipt of the ballots.
Thank you, Mayor. The only ballot received for this item is also in favor of the district. No ballots were received in opposition of. Therefore, no majority protest exists, and the council may form the district.
Move to introduce.
We have an introduction of the resolution.
Second.
And a second.
Councilmember Ariano?
Yes.
Councilmember Nisrati?
Yes.
Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Esquer?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Bray. Council items for future consideration. Uh-oh. He's breaking it out.
Wait, I wasn't ready.
He's got a long list.
All right, so you guys, I already mentioned the thing earlier. I think we need to look into our general plan as it relates to the high density, medium density, and commercial land use. The developer community that I've talked to has pretty much said there's no way to get some of these projects off the ground with what we've got going. The state wants us to figure out how to stimulate some housing development in those areas. There's funding available for it. If we go and seek it, I would like to make that something that we.
For planning?
Yeah, for planning.
Commission?
Commission, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys support that?
Planning commission has something to do.
Get some head nods? Look good? Yeah? We got one. Okay. Was that a yes? Yes. Okay, great.
Anything else?
Yeah. Here we go. This is a long agenda. Okay. I would like to revisit our legal fireworks citation prevention strategy. I don't know how many we were able to cite this past 4th. I had a couple people reach out saying, just expressing concern about what we're doing there. Talk to the chief. I think he's got some desire to maybe start up that conversation and see what we're doing, see what other cities are doing, and see if there's an opportunity for us to prevent some of those illegal fireworks and create some more citations in place for maybe hopefully by New Year's, because that's going to be another time that we're
I'm just
gonna
worried
do.
staffing, that means who's going to be policing it? Our cops, and that, I don't think we have the personnel to go out there and do that. If you want to get a bunch of volunteers that can go out and be, common folks, they can say that they're now marshalized, but I just, Chief, do you think you have personnel to do it?
So,
Deputize?
can I talk? I don't know what the plan is anymore.
Wait for public comment first.
So, yeah, we had 84 incidents of fireworks within the 24 hours of the 4th of July. I had 5 cops working, and the fire marshal was also working. Out of those 84 incidences, there's about 5 or 6 that we were able to at least get close to, but the call volumes on 4th of July for us hit 660. We actually set a record. There's absolutely no way that we could engage in the citation. And the whole idea was, working with Fire Marshal Gomez when we brought the ordinance forward, was use administrative sites and utilize overtime teams to start engaging, inclusive of fire personnel. But as this council now knows, we do not have the ability to do that on an overtime basis, and I don't have the ability to do that currently. Cities such as Modesto, Ceres, Sacramento utilized overtime teams to do that. And we have to be careful. I saw some of the comments made on Facebook and from people. City of Ceres did 50 sites at $1,000 a site. I'm going to refer you to Ferguson, Missouri, where there was an incident of a shooting, but that is outside of what happened there when Department of Justice went in and did the investigation. That city and several other cities utilized the citation process to run their cities. And I don't think that's a good idea. What we do need to do is continue to educate, and between police and fire working together, we'll be able to get that done, come up with a plan as we progress through our budget process, and then put together our overtime teams. We'll be able to address it, and the idea is to educate and then identify those 3 dates, day before 4th of July, the day of 4th of July, and day after, where we can throw some overtime teams at it and issue the citations. Our current administrative citation process allows not only for police officers, but firefighters and our support staff to do it. But it's still going to work in overtime, and it's $100, $200, and $500 fine. We don't have a $1,000 fine off the first offense, so.
Oh, then we gotta fix that.
Why not? Hopefully I gave you some information, but I'm not saying it's not going to be done, it can't be done. It can be done, it's going to be down the line, though. We're not going to be able to do it this year or next year, so.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, there's just,
I'm sorry.
there's one other question I'd like to direct to the chief then, in this context.
Don't sit down.
I could stand there and write out $1,000 tickets all night long.
What percent could
There's a
collect it?
song about that.
Sure. Okay, Lionel. All you mean all throughout the evening?
Yes.
Anyway, you know, what's recovery going to be like for us? You know, I mean, I would hate to see us assume X amount in overtime that will be offset by Y amount in tickets written and collected. What do we have for collection on these?
When you look at fines, fines are meant to step beyond the education process. So we have a process in place, we have rules in place, and we ask people to follow those rules, and when they don't, there has to be a consequence. So the fine process is a consequence. It's meant to change the practice that the individuals are engaged in. But there's a cost to it. There's a cost of the overtime of the staff. There's a cost to processing the administrative site. There's a cost to having the hearing of the administrative site and all the staff that needs to be involved in it. There's costs associated with it. So, you know, at $1,000, based on the overtime spent and the amount of hours, I don't see profit margin there.
Are we going to get the $1,000?
And that's the other thing. Are you going to get the $1,000? And where are you going to do? Because now the city attorney is going to have to go after them civilly if they don't come to it. So, you know, the whole idea is to gain compliance. A lot of the comments were made, make money. We don't make money off the backs of fines and so forth. If that's what we're engaging in, it's called a quota, and it's illegal. So we're not going to go that route, but we hope to gain compliance from the community, and we'll go down that route. But there's no money-making aspect to it, and I would never suggest that we progress that way. We hear it all the time with traffic sites. You know, you can go stop on the corner of Monte Vista and Gear and write traffic tickets all day long. Yeah, we want to gain compliance, we want to provide for the safety, but we don't make money off of it, no.
All right, it's a terrible idea. Moving on.
No, it's not a terrible idea.
It's just very difficult to execute. Yeah.
It's something we have to engage in as we have the resources.
Sure, of course. Staying on the 4th of July topic, I would hate for us to have another year where the fireworks show is canceled. So if there's any way for the city to help support community fundraising efforts, maybe that's like a Parks and Rec Commission action, yeah?
If I could just provide one supplemental piece of information. this was not purely a financial decision, although that was certainly part of it, both on the city's part and the college's part. It was the construction going on at the campus. Now, that may or may not be done by next year, but I do want to make sure to make sure we manage expectations without making a promise we can't follow through on.
Okay.
So you were aware.
Yeah. I mean, if
multiple dimensions.
In the event that the college can't do it, I think that we've had it in the fairgrounds in previous years. I would like to figure out how we as a city can help ensure that this time next year we are giving the people that show.
If I may make a comment real quick, I think part of the problem with the fairgrounds also was that the fair starts Friday.
They changed the date.
So
because of
the
state
fair keeps moving closer and closer to the 4th of July, and they.
Well, we got a whole year to figure it out, so
Yeah.
let's figure it out. No excuse, we got plenty of
We could do it in your backyard. but-
Yeah, why not? They were doing it in my backyard. Well, the neighbors on the other side of the street were. Okay, so what can we do as what would be that step? Just form something like that.
If I may, I think you've taken all the steps that are necessary tonight.
Okay.
With the exception of giving your city manager some guidance as far as, great idea.
Okay.
Okay, how many friends does that idea have?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Many friends?
Yeah, let's make it happen. Make it happen.
Lots of friends.
Okay, but you got a whole year to make it happen. We had budgeted the $100,000 for the economic development communication social media thing. I would like us to start moving forward with that as soon as possible. We've got to consolidate our communications on the social media side to make sure that the story that we're telling from City Hall is properly informing the people of what's happening here. We've got a lot of good things, and if we don't write our own narrative, other people will. So can we get some thumbs up to move that forward?
Well, we'll do it in our economic development committee.
So through the economic
Yeah, because
development?
we don't need to do it out here. We
Oh,
can
we
do
do
it within
it
them, yeah.
through there? Okay. All right. We had another, we had a pedestrian lose their life off of Christofferson, and I think that this speaks to the higher concern that I have about some of those main thoroughfares on Christofferson and Monte Vista, people driving ridiculous speeds around university and residential neighborhoods. And I don't know what the answer is to kind of make those conditions safer, but I would like to see some sort of evaluation of the ways to help promote safer pedestrian activity and safer driver activity in that area. Whether that's we've got the share the road signs now with the new bike lanes coming out. If it's things like putting signage out that reminds people that they're going through right next to residential, right next to the universities, we've got to do something to really help promote safer interaction between the pedestrians across our community. And the big ones, Christofferson, Monte Vista, people are flying down those streets, and if we can prevent something down the road, I'd like to see us to evaluate the safety on that side. Yes? Is that a yes? I'm asking for a lot. That's all. That's the last one I got.
Maybe just talk it through with your staff and see if you have staffing for.
Yeah, I mean, that's, so
everything goes to staffing.
first of all, there's a consensus that this item on the speeding is something we'd like to engage on. Let me put it this way. What we have here is kind of the beginning of a strategic planning session. You know, we only have so much, as the young people would say, we've only got so much RAM available. We've got capacity. We're doing our daily jobs. We want to do them better. It's going to take time. And so I cannot say to you.
Not in the immediate next agenda or anything like that, but I want it on your forecast and start to get the ball rolling on it and figure out how we can squeeze it in down the road. I know that we have some money budgeted for safety for the transportation budget, and if there's things we can do, even if it's just simple signage and things like
I
that.
think what I'm in a position to do is to come back to you and tell you, this is what we can, this is what we can do. This is how long it's going to take. And these are the things that we won't be able to do while we're doing these things. And I do think that recent, things that we've done together recently, things that I will be doing together with the executive team, that we really will be having some strategic planning sessions within the next couple of months, engaging among the members of council and the departments. And these will be some things that will get put into that pot, but I'm not sure what else is going to go in. I'm not sure what that pot's going to be able to hold.
And like lumped into that same category of, safety of pedestrians, the tracks. I think someone told me we've had 40 lives lost along the rail in Turlock's history, something like that. I don't know what we can do there. If there's things that we can improve the safety along those tracks as well.
Mr. City Manager, sorry, this is Nathan over here.
Oh, Nathan, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My attention was
driven across over there, I know. I know, I may be out of turn here, but I just want to go on record as your city engineer. I'm not aware of any facilities that are unsafe or that pose a dangerous condition by any means. And so I just want to get on record and say that.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, actually, since we're on the topic of that, safety, I was going to throw something at the chief. Is there anything that you know of, any grants that might be available for
Bringing her, tying her in.
safety cameras or something? It's more to put up traffic cameras that might help us since we are short on manpower?
So just to answer some of the questions, I agree with Nathan. I don't know of any safety issues in regards to roadways, curbs, crosswalks, lighting, et cetera. Those are all addressed on a regular basis. Previous council, we set up a traffic accident reduction team. It's basically our 2 traffic officers and our traffic sergeant, along with social media and media type education, our signage and so forth. And every month you get your reports from the police department, and on your last page it identifies your traffic collisions, pedestrian collisions, and for the last year we've been reducing those collisions through those efforts. So we do have programs in place for education and enforcement. Unfortunately, the incident that happened that you're referring to, council member, it was an unfortunate collision accident. And in regards to the primary collision factor or what caused it, that is still under investigation under the MATE team, Major Accident Investigation Team, so I'm not at liberty to discuss it. But remember, Christopherson and Gear Road are main arteries, and they're designed to move traffic at set speed limits that are taken care of by our engineer. So there are concerns whenever you have crosswalks on a 5-lane, 4-lane roadway. But there are also responsibilities that fall on the pedestrians themselves along with motorists. We all have a responsibility. In the police department, along with Cal State Stanislaus, we work together, and we've come up with quite a few different plans, and we've been able to reduce your traffic collisions, motorists, bicyclists, et cetera. So, we're going to continue with that project. That has never stopped. But along that lines, you look at Kroll Road and using traffic engineering, Cal State, and some grant monies, we were able to take the roadway and reduce its width, put the flashing lights, and lower the speeds there. So there are programs out there that we've already initiated in, and we continue to initiate in. As for grants, Office of Traffic Safety does provide certain types of grants. We've been successful in multiple grants. That's where we got most of our electronic signage equipment. And then overtime monies, they do provide it for traffic safety. We don't have any success in the grant right now because we did so well in regards to DUI enforcement and so forth, but we're continuously looking for the grants. I also have a very capable grant writer in our agency that's for free and works with Congressman Harder's office. So we're constantly looking for it, but we have been reducing it, we have been educating, and we're not stopping. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does get better when school's in, because there's more police presence over there during the break. It's just, I mean, it's just a thoroughfare, and, you know,
And
the
the-
kids don't pay attention when they go across the street. They just don't.
They don't. Either do adults too.
Well, and I was walking across Walnut yesterday, and the lady just did not stop at the red light, so I almost got it. So I don't know what to do.
Merely a suggestion.
I know.
Okay. You have comments, announcements, anything?
I just had a quick comment. We had a great, Andrew and I did a joint meeting for the housing, and he did a great job facilitating that. And we had some really good comments and suggestions, and we're gonna bringing those back hopefully on the 23rd with Maren. We had some very good community engagement and some really positive ideas that came out of that meeting. So we'll move forward with our plans and bring them back to the council, and we can discuss them there. So I think that's it. Oh, everybody needs to go to the fair. Fair starts Friday. And if you see anything from the fair's perspective, they have a new sheriff, and this is his first fair, and so we need the community to be involved and make sure that our exterior community is also safe. And
Say something, say something.
say something, say something.
Say something.
So,
say something.
yes, we need to make sure that our exterior and interior communities are safe, and we just want everyone to enjoy the fair. So the weather should be good.
Councilmember Larson.
I wanted to announce that Councilmember Scare and my ad hoc groups, engagement and jobs and prevention, will be meeting this Thursday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. in this room. Looking forward to having some great discussion. The agenda is out, and a lot of other supporting information is on the page on the city website. I believe it's Homelessness Initiatives, it's called. You can look up the agenda on there, as well as if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to Councilmember Scare and I.
Anything else?
Okay, all right. I just had a meeting yesterday with the group from CSUS that are working on the fact sheet that we've been talking about. They're rolling, they're going forward with it. Basically, I've been put them in contact with Maren, with Mike Cook, because they want to do a tour of the water facility. They're looking for things to highlight Turlock for anybody that's interested in coming to Turlock, living here, or business or industry. The group is, they're pretty excited, and they're ready to get going. And essentially, I'm like the middleman. All I'm doing is directing traffic. I'm just making contacts.
There you go, Chief. We got another traffic guy here.
I'm just giving it the contact people. I'm giving it. I do. I do. Can I put a dash cam in my car?
It's electronic now, so you really have to just punch them.
Okay, but if I had a dash cam in my car, can I just send it to you? No. Anyway, that project is going underway. I've introduced him to Sue Micheletti over at the Chamber of Commerce. So they're making several contacts, and I think that's gonna be really a nice project. Like I say, they are really excited, and I'm looking forward to see the end of this.
Closed session, Counselor.
Mayor, conference with labor negotiators, California Government Code 54957.6A. Agencies group will be the Turlock Associated Police Officers, Turlock City Employees Association, Turlock Firefighters Association, Turlock Management Association, Public Safety, and unrepresented employees. Liability claims, claimant Brandy Speckens.
Okay. Off we go to closed session.